Chilled Temptation by Black authors. When brilliant and ambitious jewelry designer Zuri Lawson finds herself stranded on a luxury Antarctic expedition ship amidst a treacherous winter storm, it's not just nature that threatens her survival. The enigmatic and dangerously compelling Elias Carter, the man who purchased her company's crippling debt, appears on her doorstep, ready to collect, personally. As they battle to stay alive, a dark secret looms over them, intertwining their fates and awakening desires in a way neither could have predicted. But in a world where betrayal lurks around every corner, will their newly ignited passion burn away the ice of distrust or freeze them in a life-or-death struggle? Chapter 1. A Frosty Welcome. The frosty air nipped at my cheeks as I approached the luxury expedition ship, the Aurora, anchored just beyond the rocky outcrop that served as the gateway to the Antarctic landscape. The pristine white deck gleamed under the pale morning light, inviting yet intimidating, like a pristine canvas that awaited the tempest of adventure. Each step felt heavier than 1,000 mistakes I hoped to leave behind. The crushing weight of anticipatory excitement weighed just as heavily as the icy wind whipping around me. "Zuri, hey! You made it!" Sarah's voice broke through the biting chill, laughter laced within it. She was bundled in a thick fuchsia parka that made her look even brighter against the pallid backdrop. I smiled, instantly warmed by her presence. "Barely. I thought I might freeze over before I got here." I hugged her quickly before pulling back, my gaze darting past her excited expression to the ship looming behind us. "You'll love it." She followed my eyes, her grin unyielding. "And you'll be in great company, too." Just as she said this, a shadow fell across me, and I turned to face him. Elias Carter stood there, a silhouette of commanding elegance against the ship's shimmering hull. The icy wind brushed against his face, yet he looked perfectly at ease, a devil-may-care smile playing at the corners of his lips. It was the kind of smile that held dark secrets and untold stories. "Didn't think I'd see the day you'd make it to Antarctica, Zuri." His voice was smooth and casual, but there was an edge to it, a teasing challenge. "Thanks for the vote of confidence, Elias," I shot back playfully, folding my arms over my chest. A futile attempt to shield my heart from the unpredictability he always brought with him. "I just thought maybe the cold would be too much for you," he replied, stepping closer, his presence hovering like the crisp air, charged with possibility. "Let's find out, shall we?" I matched his intensity, stepping forward until the cold metal of the ship pressed into my back, the moment thick with unspoken tension. My irritation at him stirred something deeper, igniting a familiar spark that had lain dormant within me since we last saw each other. I wanted to fight him, to punch that smirk off his face, yet I was equally compelled to lean closer, to breathe him in. The pull between us felt magnetic. It teased my resolve. "Zuri," Sarah interrupted, her enthused tone suddenly turning serious. "Did you hear about the financial news?" I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Antarctic air wrap around my heart. "What news?" "The company. It's in trouble. There's talk of downsizing," she said, her voice lowering, as if the accusation of betrayal wasn't meant for my ears. Like, big trouble. The comfortable atmosphere shattered like ice underfoot, my vision blurred for a moment. The last thing I needed was a threat to my hard-earned position at Zuri Jewelers. I had fought tooth and nail to be recognized as a creative force in a world dominated by men. "How bad?" "They're already making cuts in the New York branch. I overheard something about restructuring the design team," she whispered, eyes wide. "I didn't want you to hear it from others, especially since you're up for that big project." A lump formed in my throat as I gazed at the splendor of the ship before me, which now felt like a gilded cage instead of a vessel for adventure. "I can't believe this. Not now, not here." "I can get more information if you want. Maybe find a way to—" "No." My word was a denial, present and severe, slicing through the chilly air. "I can't. I shouldn't. I'll focus on the craft and the voyage. I needed to keep moving forward. Needed this expedition more than ever now, with everything at stake. I'm just saying, Sarah began, but Elias interjected. You need to take a breath, Zuri. Stress doesn't help anyone. He stepped closer, his tone shifting, intermingling lightness with something more weighted. It's just an expedition. Find your moment on this ship, no matter what's going on back home. Easy for him to say, with his advantageous position. His effortless charm meant he walked through the world with a deluge of influence. But your moment should elude anxiety, he added, that tantalizing grin returning. Trust me, I specialize in distractions. Is that your way of asking to be my distraction? I quipped, eyes narrowed mischievously. Perhaps, or maybe I simply admire your tenacity. It's commendable for someone who's juggling a lot, he shot back, the atmosphere crackling with intensity. Don't patronize me. I bit my lip, a protective instinct clawing at my defenses. His eyes darkened momentarily, but he laughed softly, as if taking no offense, and I found myself chasing the shadow of something unexpressed in his gaze. The vulnerability lurked there, a brief opening full of possibilities, a glimpse of a deeper connection, an invitation veiled in playful banter. Before I could follow that train of thought, Sarah clapped her hands together, breaking the tension. All right, let's get on board. We can't linger in the cold forever. In brisk succession, we climbed the gangway, where the crew awaited with warm, spiced apple cider, and I took the steaming cup gratefully. The heat spilled fragrant against my chilled fingers, pulling me back from the precipice of worry and longing. Welcome aboard, ladies. A tall woman with striking silver braids and warm eyes greeted us. I'm Petra, your expedition leader. We'll be starting our first briefing soon, so settle in. The hall inside was richly embroidered with dark woods, each glance offering a glimpse into a world of exploration. Sunlight filtered through the massive windows, illuminating the vivid azure of the ocean below, accented by the swirling foamy whitecaps. As we settled into our seats, Elias appeared beside me, feigning casualness, as though he hadn't just sent heat sparking through my entire being. You know, the ice can be dangerously deceptive, he said, voice low and smooth. How poetic. I shot him a sidelong look, trying to maintain my composure. But I'm not as easily fooled as you think. His laughter rang in the air, rich and inviting, creating a melody of warmth that spiraled dangerously around us. You, Zuri Lawson, are full of surprises. I'm going to enjoy this trip far more than I expected. Oh, is that right? His expression darkened momentarily, filled with intentions I couldn't define. Just keep yourself open to whatever might happen. What are we talking about here? An adventure, or you peeling back layers like an onion? I teased, raising an eyebrow defiantly. Both, if you're willing to let me choose. Onions and adventures are best enjoyed meticulously peeled, revealing everything within. His words hung in the air, their implications daring me to delve deeper into the full complexity of his character. Are we still talking about me? I replied, incredulous and seduced by the ebb and flow of our banter. Perhaps. His voice dropped, intimate and electric, stirring something that felt raw and authentic. The tension shifted and expanded. Every shared moment pulsed with a sharp undercurrent of curiosity and desire. Enough of the games, Carter. Let's see if you can survive the ice before we plan our next intricate disguise. He matched my challenge with a knowing smile. I seemed to be handily prepared for just about anything. Does that include sudden exposure to revealing truths? I narrowed my eyes, marveling at how relentless our repartee had become. How thrilling the stakes felt beneath the veneer of casual encounter. Well, you know I'm always here to shed light on the unyielding shadows, Zuri. You bring the adventure, I'll bring the illumination. I shook my head, half amused, half intrigued. Just as quickly, a grin crept onto my lips. You are insufferable. Only just met you again, and I'm already weary of your cleverness. Just think of it as a charming companionship on a lonely landscape. The ship's engine hummed steadily beneath us. a tempting reminder that beyond the well-appointed innards, the glaciers loomed, unforgiving and vast. I took a deep breath, shielding myself from the swirl of uncertainty in my gut. Here, in isolation surrounded by epic beauty, my heart began to thaw, igniting possibilities I hadn't dared to dream, or perhaps had long since buried in the depths of my own icy despair. As the first breathing began, and Petra's voice cut through the tension, Elias leaned subtly closer, whispering into my ear, "Some ice is easily melted, Zuri. You just have to let it happen." And in that charged moment, the frostiness between ambition and vulnerability blended, creating a heady cocktail of anxiety and anticipation for what lay ahead. The journey was just beginning, and I could either let the cold control me or embrace the heat that began sparking between us. Exhilarating, uncontainable, and impossible to ignore. "Let's just get through this briefing first," I muttered quietly to myself. But as my heart quickened painfully beneath the surface, a different thought loomed larger. Maybe the greatest adventure started long before we set sail upon the icy unknown. Chapter 2. The Mysterious Creditor. The ship creaked like the voice of an old man, sharing secrets about lost loves under dim lights. Wisps of ocean air brushed against my cheeks as I stood at my cabin window, a frame of polished mahogany surrounding the view of untouched ice, glimmering like glass under a waning sun. Outside, the glacier loomed, magnificent and unforgiving, a reminder of nature's relentless grip. It sighed and shifted with the weight of history, inebriated by the cold, challenging anyone brave enough to approach it. My skin prickled with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. Days had passed since we'd embarked on this expedition, but the world still spun with its complexities and challenges. My jewelry designs, once mere sketches in my mind, felt even more distant than the horizon locked in ice. Sitting on the ship's deck, I'd imagined launching my brand into the elite circle of Antarctic luxury, selling crystal-infused pendants fashioned from the very terrain surrounding me. Succumbing to yesteryear's scars, however, had become too familiar. Beneath my confidence lay whispers of uncertainty, echoes from a past that wouldn't remain silent. Suddenly, a firm knock at my door shattered my reverie. My heart raced at the familiar cadence, a rhythm too profound to ignore. Each knock seemed to bring with it a dust of warmth, and within me, a riot sparked. "Zuri, are you there?" Elias Carter's voice, rich and textured, carried through the wood, luring me toward the door like a moth to a flame. Just hearing his name was enough to awaken a tempest within me. What was it about him? This magnetic force that unnerved my carefully organized thoughts, triggering a longing that flirted with danger. I opened the door, and he stood there, framed against the sterile glow of the corridor, his silhouette as multidimensional as the dark waters below us. His gaze scanned my face, sharp and discerning, before settling somewhere deep inside me. "Mind if I come in?" "Isn't that what my cabin is for?" I replied, struggling to match his casual demeanor with my own misalignment of emotions. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him with a measured gentleness that belied the storm brewing between us. The softly illuminated cabin felt smaller, constrained, yet cloaked in a desperate electricity simmering beneath the surface. "You didn't seem to be in the mood for company when we last crossed paths at dinner," he remarked, a hint of amusement lacing his words, as he moved to lean against the small desk across the room, arms crossed. "I believe there's a fine line between mood and how you interpret a quiet moment," I shot back, matching his stance with a confidence I hoped would conceal the flutter in my chest. "It's called self-preservation." Elias's brow arched slightly, a playful dance teasing the corners of his mouth. "What's wrong with being curious? I was hoping to inspire a little more adventure in your evening." "Adventure?" The word hung between us. The way he spoke it felt like a promise laced with danger. "What do you know of my idea of adventure?" "Not nearly enough," he admitted, and I caught the glimmer of something deeper in his gaze, a subtle vulnerability that caught me off guard. "But I'm learning." I moved closer, drawn by his authenticity, and challenged him through my own proximity. Why don't you share your definition with me instead of leaving me to unravel you like a secret? His laughter rumbled across the room, rich and deep, resonating with unpretentious charm. Challenge accepted. There was a deliberate pause, a calculated motion that turned serious as he continued. But let's start with what you really want, Zuri. You're here now, surrounded by luxury, yet you seem shackled by something you won't let go of. Isn't that the question of the hour? I shot back, sarcasm layering my tone like lacquer on wood. What is it that you want from me? Don't twist this. I care about you. I want to invest in you. His intensity raised the temperature in the room, and I felt layers of my guarded heart begin to melt. Emotionally, creatively, open your eyes. Invest? That's rich coming from you. The barb slipped out before I could stop it. Beneath the layers of my bravado, I was stinging with distrust. You want to play caretaker or savior? What do you get out of this? His brows knit together in momentary frustration. I am not a savior. How many times do I have to say it? I want to be here for you, whatever that means. It's beyond help. It's about partnership. I laughed softly, but it carried an edge of disbelief. Partnership? Right after playing the financial wizard behind my back? The mysterious benefactor? My voice cracked under pressure. This whole situation feels like a conundrum dressed in beneficence. You're not letting me in. His voice lowered, thickening with emotion. I had my own reasons for wanting to remain anonymous, but I am not your enemy, Zuri. Standing straight, he maintained an imposing presence, but in his eyes softened an invitation to trust. The air thickened with the weight of our exchange, an unspoken acknowledgement that we were both grappling with shards of vulnerability lurking among our bravado. I wanted to reach for him, to step across that invisible barrier, but fear was a heavy veil. Let me guess this was the part where you play the hero, I murmured, allowing a fragile smile to break the tension. I'm supposed to swoon over the fact that you've mapped every detail of my life without my consent? Elias chuckled again, a rich, rumbling sound that rekindled memories of warmth igniting within me. Honey, I'm no hero. I'm just an ambitious opponent trying to find a way to navigate this game we call life, while aiming to win your heart. Flattery is supposed to be my weapon of choice, I countered, biting back a grin. But there was nothing flippant about his expression. He moved closer, closing the distance, and I could almost feel the magnetic pull urging me into the depths of his warmth. Careful, Zuri. His voice softened dangerously low. Flattery can lead to untamed desires. I inhaled, searching his face for answers. Questions swirling, hanging in the air like flakes of snow suspended in time. Desire, I whispered, barely audible, but sharp and clear between us. That's a tricky word. But an enticing one, isn't it? He replied, bravado flaring up again. His body leaned toward mine, sensing the vulnerability layering into something less than cordial, more electric. Before I could unlatch my guard, a loud knock resounded from my door, rattling the both of us. The interruption a physical reminder that we existed in a realm teetering between connection and conflict. Zuri, Elias, you two okay in there? My friend Lila's voice rang cheerful and completely oblivious to the tension. We've got a game of darts ready in the common area. No backing out. Elias caught my eye, his amusement battling against the annoyance of our moment being stripped away. Looks like we're summoned. Summoned indeed, I sighed, and while the pressure simmered down, the intimacy of our proximity lingered. Guess we can't save the world in here. He offered a knowing smile, retreating slightly to the perimeter of the room as I walked to the door. But just remember, I'm still interested in this game we're playing. The stakes are higher than you think. As I opened the door, ready to rejoin the world outside our intimate bubble, I turned back and whispered, "And just how bad are those stakes in your estimation?" Elias stepped into my line of vision, mirroring my stance, his mouth teasing open with a playful challenge. You'll find out soon enough. His gaze sparkled with intent, igniting an insatiable spark in my core. With laughter from Lila interrupting our moment, and the warmth of his presence still clinging to me like smoke, I stepped into the corridor. prompted, at least for the moment, to forget the bills to be paid. The debts, both emotional and financial, waiting just outside this intimate realm. In this frozen world, perhaps the greatest gamble was about to unroll, nestled dangerously between tangled hearts. Chapter 3: Stormy Encounters. The ship creaked around me, the stark clang of metal echoing like a chorus of discontent. I pressed my palm against the cool steel wall, feeling the vibrations, alive with the storm brewing outside. I inhaled deeply, the scent of varnished wood and salt water melding into something oddly comforting, a reminder that I was surrounded by life, even in this isolated corner of the world. Yet it was hard to feel settled with the howling winds promising chaos and the icy grip of panic wrapping itself around my chest. The untamed landscape of Antarctica mirrored my own growing storm, a whirlwind of desire, ambition, and underlying fear of surrender. "Elias, could you please keep it down?" I called out over the wind, the hairs on my arms standing on end as I stepped into the lounge. My voice trembled, a mixture of irritation and something else. Anticipation? No, that couldn't be it. He glanced up from the card table, his attention diverting from a game the others were deeply engrossed in. The fierce glint in his eyes caught me off guard, reflecting storms far beyond the tempest outside. "Do you think I'm too loud?" His smirk was cocky, the kind that sent a pulse of heat straight to my cheeks, even now when we both knew tension crackled like electricity between us. A few of our fellow passengers around the table shifted uncomfortably, and for a moment I dreaded that they'd pick up on our back and forth like it was some kind of entertainment. I straightened my spine, summoning my professionalism. "You're not just loud, you're—" I hesitated, searching for the right word. "Obnoxious." It was like throwing a lit match into a vat of oil. Sparks flew. "Obnoxious? Is that really how you see me?" He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his broad chest. The movement showcased his entire presence, like the storm personified, looming over the fragile elements that composed me. "Well, your voice carries across the ocean. Not that anyone else in the room has great taste in card games, but still." I shot back firmly, resisting the urge to break even a hint of a smile. Elias chuckled, his laughter rich, reverberating against the walls like the roll of thunder outside. "I could be a great taste in card games if you would just give me a chance." His challenge smoothed over the tension between us, making me want to reach out, touch him, claim whatever fire brewed just out of reach. "Why do you assume I want you to be great at anything, Elias?" I leaned on the table, challenging the magnetism that pulled at my very core, knowing fully well that the mere proximity to him tugged at my stability like the relentless waves outside. "Because you might like a man who's great at something, but you also seem to enjoy hating me, which consequently makes me even more charming." His words danced between us like snowflakes, each carrying a different meaning. "You're unbelievable." I pressed my lips together to keep from laughing, feeling the warmth bubble up, struggling against my irritation. Of course he wouldn't let it drop. "Unbelievable? Or just unbelievably attractive?" He shot back, his gaze unwavering and challenging, as if daring me to disrespect the commerce of our chemistry. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, in the quiet that followed. "You do realize we have an actual storm raging outside, right?" I snapped, indignant but animated. My heart raced at the way his eyes sparkled with mischief, the teasing air between us refusing to dissolve. "Exactly. An ice ship caught in a storm with flirtatious strangers. Sounds like fun to me." "Flirtatious? Goodness, I prefer the term tactical." I rolled my eyes, but couldn't help the way my lips instinctively curled, caught in the dangerous web we were weaving, even as the tempest swirled beyond our cocoon. "Strategically engaging." He leaned closer, an inflection of intimacy following his words. "I like that. So tell me, Zuri, what's your battle plan against me?" The playful cadence of his voice stirred my insides, threading tightly around my resolve. But before I could gather my thoughts, the ship lurched violently, a jarring lurch that cut through the banter. The table rattled, cards scattering like fallen autumn leaves swirled in a gust. "No, no, hold on to something," one of the others barked, eyes wide, panic threading into our once cozy lounge. A shout drowned out the chaos. "We need to secure everything. Get below deck." Another voice rang, and suddenly the atmosphere shifted. "Elias!" I clutched the edge of the table, my heart racing, adrenaline sparkling in my veins. "What do we do?" "Stay close to me," he barked, his eyes narrowing, instinctively searching the room for safer ground, even as he pushed forward, reaching for my arm. My heart ricocheted at his touch. His hand felt solid, assuring against my skin. The crew scrambled, a frenzy of confusion and orders overlapping like a hectic symphony. In the middle of it all, I was acutely aware of how close we were. "This is going so well," I quipped, drawing a half-hearted laugh from him. "I promise you it's only going to get better," he replied, leaning slightly closer, intensifying the connection as stillness seeped briefly into the chaos. "If we survive this, we'll laugh about it later." "Let's hope your luck holds," I murmured, but the words hung heavy between us, as though we both understood there was more than just the storm at play. With a screech of twisted metal, the ship was jolted once more, and Elias caught me, wrapping an arm around my waist as we stumbled off balance. The world around us fell silent, just for a second, until the embrace sparked something primal between us, igniting the air. "Elias!" I gasped, breath hitching. There was a wildness in his eyes as he caught my face between his strong hands, genuine and raw. "Zuri, if we're going to survive, I need you to trust me." His voice dropped to a whisper, all of the noise fading into white noise behind us. I could see the storm mirrored in his eyes, tempestuous and fierce, but so powerful it moved me beyond fear. "I trust you." The admission slipped out before I could tamp it down. The air thickened with the heat of our intimacy, the anguish of a connection that had ignited long before this moment. "Good." With that single word, he pulled me closer still, our bodies colliding against the backdrop of havoc surrounding us. Fire and ice, supply and demand, passion lit within the facility of survival. I felt the surge of longing, years of suppression bursting like a dam as his lips brushed against mine. A sudden clamor surged back, causing an involuntary shudder between my dreams and reality, like a fleeting hope of clarity. "Shall I take that kiss off the table then?" He teased into the space created between us, breaking the trance with reckless bravado. I glared at the audacity of his streaks of humor amidst chaos. "Right now, on a ship on the brink of catastrophe?" I dared to mock, the thrill coiling in my chest abruptly shaken with anxiety. He grinned again, that magnetic smile threatening to unravel me, even amid violent storms. What better time to indulge? The world is falling apart, but here we are, electrifying. "Admittedly, I'm starting to see the appeal," I admitted, feeling the pulse of exhilaration surge through the dread, daring to accept this strange dance of inevitability. As we steadied each other amidst chaos, I ventured ahead with a teasing heart. "Just remember, if everything collapses, it's absolutely your fault." Noted. A bare brush of our fingertips ignited embers, setting us on a collision course with possibility. "Okay, Mr. Tactical Flirt, where to next?" He released my waist and turned toward the exit, a confidence and assertiveness radiating. "Down to the lower deck. We'll get secured there safely." In the confusion and urgency of our shared fight for survival, I found solace in our chaotic synergy. The protective strength of his presence matched the electrifying thrill in my veins. The storm may have been unforgiving, but it was leading me deeper into something fierce and breathtaking, changing the very fabric of who I was. I followed, curiosity and desire ignited, and with every step we took, I sensed that the real revelation was yet to come, somewhere on the verge of surrender, cloaked beneath icy pressure and passionate storm. The exhilaration, the push and pull between us, defined a reality I had yet to fully grasp, but felt undeniably in my bones. This adventure snowballed, danger, tension, and all, and I imagined what it would mean to survive not only the storm, but also the intricacies of a heart unfastening its grip around a secret. As the ship strained against the torrent, I turned my gaze back to him, his silhouette framed by a cascade of sounds and shadows. And remember, Elias, whoever has the darkest secrets ends up in the least popular corner when the chaos settles. He tilted his head, eyes glinting with mischief. Then let's ensure we're at the front of the line. With those words echoing in the air, we stepped into the rising storm, and for the first time I felt my heart race not from fear, but from unbridled anticipation. Chapter 4: Testing Limits. The ocean of ice stretched out before us, endless and unforgiving, a mesmerizing landscape of pure white and piercing blue that seemed to swallow the horizon whole. As I stepped outside, a sharp gust of wind bit at my cheeks, but the thrill of adventure coursed through my veins. The world felt suspended between extremes: the cold, the isolation, and the vibrant life we dared to create within this frozen cage. Elias stood a few paces ahead, looking as formidable as ever, silhouetted against the icy expanse. His presence had a way of igniting a spark within me, but today that fire flickered uncertainly. I watched the range of his muscles shift beneath his snug thermal jacket as he adjusted his goggles, a memory of the way he had wrapped me in warmth during one of our late-night talks flickering in my mind. I blinked those thoughts away. This expedition was about exploration, not emotions, yet I was acutely aware of the tension brewing beneath the surface. "Do you think it's safe?" I asked, my breath swirling like mist in the cold air. Elias turned, his expression a blend of amusement and challenge. "Safe is boring, Zuri. You know that." The glint in his eye sent a shiver not just from the cold. He had this uncanny ability to elevate the stakes, whether we were discussing finance or the intricacies of navigating through this icy wilderness. "Besides, we won't test our limits if we don't push them." "I'm all for boundaries," I countered, smirking as I stepped closer, "but I'm also in favor of getting back in one piece." With a chuckle, he gestured further into the shimmering void of white. "Just follow my lead. I promise I'll keep you safe." His voice was rich, teasing, but layered with an unspoken promise, igniting my ambition, yet taunting my previous resolve. We started our descent down a narrow slope, carefully maneuvering over the crevasses that dotted the terrain. The thrill was palpable, pulsing like electricity between us, but so was an underlying friction, its origins tangled in the complex web of trust and mistrust that had woven itself into the fabric of our relationship. "Elias," I began, as I landed deftly beside him, catching an edge in the ice. "You know, you might want to consider that keeping me safe involves some degree of emotional clarity." "Emotional clarity?" he echoed, incredulity laced in his tone. "We're miles from civilization, in the middle of a frozen wasteland. What's clear to you might be an absolute mess to me." "Quite the philosopher," I quipped, batting my eyebrows in mock seriousness. We paused, his eyes scrutinizing mine. A battle of wills ensued. There was weight in the silence, and I could feel my heart hammering away, tethered between trepidation and something else, something fiery, daring to emerge. Just as I opened my mouth to speak again, a deep crack echoed ominously beneath our feet. My heart dropped as I glanced down. The ground splintered beside us, a menacing crevasse yawning wider, a dark maw ready to swallow us whole. Panic clawed at my throat as Elias lunged forward, his strong hand gripping my arm, pulling me closer. "Zuri, watch where you're stepping," he shouted over the wailing wind, his breath coming out in quick, sharp bursts. "I don't need the commentary," I snapped, my heart racing, both from fear and the intoxicating rush of being so near to him in that moment. Somehow, the reality of almost losing my footing made everything else fade into the background, a cacophony of thoughts silenced by the thrill of survival. "You're angry," he observed, an edge in his voice that fathomed the undercurrents of my emotions. "It's okay. Let it out." "Not angry, just, you don't always have to be the hero," I fired back, my voice slicing through the tension. Elias stepped back, a flicker of interest in his eyes, one eyebrow quirking upwards, challenging me without uttering a word. And you don't always have to act as if you're completely fine either. His honesty struck home, sharper than any ice shard I might encounter. Before I had a chance to respond, he turned away, his back to me, and I noticed a crack in his carefully maintained facade. "It's not easy for me, you know," he said. "More to the ice than me. Everything we're doing, it's not simple. And I stepped closer, my curiosity piqued. "What are you saying?" He squared his shoulders, facing me again, vulnerability sparking in those rich, dark eyes. "I watch, I protect, but sometimes I don't know how to act. My instincts drive me to take charge, yet every time I do, I feel like I'm losing you." Those words left me momentarily speechless. The tension between us shifted, tangible and electric. "Elias, it's not a matter of losing." Then there it was again. That growing desire clawed within me, fueled by a need I had yet to comprehend fully. My emotions were like the layers of ice we tread, thin and fragile, yet beautiful in their complexity. Suddenly, a wild impulse overtook me. Stepping forward, I closed the distance, our faces barely inches apart now, his warmth radiating even in the frigid air. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my heart thumping loudly, the silence wrapping around us like the cold, limitless sky. "I'm not sure, but I know I want more," he breathed, the distance evaporating, filling with heat. "You make me feel too much to just walk away." Before I could respond, a roaring wind surged between us, but it felt inconsequential compared to the whirlwind inside. Then my body tilted, gravity shifting underfoot, and in an instant, our world slicked away. We both grasped for balance on the teetering brink, but aligning perfectly with him allowed us to regain awareness, hands gripping tighter. "Whoa, hold on," I yelped, drawing on his strength. "Got it," he said, steadying me with a firm grip, determination in his voice. Regaining our footing, I moved with a new conviction, pulling him along as we navigated further into the deep crevices of the ice, a dance between adventure and disaster. It was exhilarating, and for the first time, the thrill felt like freedom rather than confinement. As we pressed on, Elias's gaze remained fixed on me, catching wisps of my humor amidst the tension. "You know, if we accidentally fall into the crevasse, I'll be forced to go on a rescue mission. Have you seen my biceps? Trust me, I carry a lot of weight." "Next time, just try calling the cops. There's no need for a dramatic hero complex here, Elias," I shot back, trying to keep the atmosphere light, while my heart raced dangerously close to that much deeper emotion. "Who needs cops when I have you? You're in this with me, Zuri." His confidence pierced through the tension. "I am, but let's not make a habit of tempting fate, okay?" My challenging tone tangled perfectly with our mutual laughter, softening the earlier sharp edges. As we descended deeper into the icy abyss, I felt the walls of emotional armor around my heart crack and crumble, just enough to allow Elias to peer inside. The vulnerability I had fought so hard to protect now danced dangerously close to betrayal. I had never expected such rawness from him. Here, at the end of the world, all the barriers between us began to melt, disintegrating like the ice beneath our feet. But with vulnerability came jealousy. A gust of laughter bubbled from the crew behind us, a pair of friends, Mira and Jamal, sharing some flirty banter, their breaths mingling in the frigid air. It echoed the spark that grew in me, awareness creeping that perhaps the wild tension in our midst was partly entwined with how suddenly Elias appeared in my life. How much of that was meant for me? I felt an urge to glance back, but I kept my eyes on Elias, anchoring myself in the connection we wove. "Do you envy them?" I asked softly, pushing aside the edge of jealousy to step deeper into understanding. "Let's be real, Zuri," he said shortly, a rare edge in his voice. "They've got each other, and I've." His eyes were suddenly piercing and intense, blocking out all external distractions. "But more importantly, I want you to want me." With a breath that trembled with emotions I tried to hold back, I dared to lean in closer again, lowering my voice to a whisper. I want you, but it's complicated. Complexity is an understatement. Then he grinned, that warmth washing over me again. But it's simultaneously what makes this an adventure. You can't be afraid to push boundaries. From behind, a shout punctuated the moment, a startled call from the crew, though we barely registered it. It was just us, lost in our own world, the thrill of the ice, the warmth radiating from proximity, and the sharpness of revelation cutting through it all. No one said love would be easy, I murmured, caught between wrestling the reality of my ambition and a yearning that threatened to swallow us both whole in the broken ice. Then let's make it worthwhile, Elias replied, his voice low and sultry. In this moment, I made a choice. Just as I navigated the path before me, I grasped his hand, fingers intertwining tightly, not just out of fear, but out of a yearning, and we rushed toward a promise that pulsed through the ice, daring us to leap forward. But Zuri, he cautioned, seriousness creeping back into his features, if we get lost in there, then we will find our way back, I assured him, my voice resonant, together. As the icy winds howled, I let that choice echo within the frozen expanse, admiration shimmering between us like those glacial blues beyond. Chapter 5. Secrets Unveiled. The sound of water splashing against polished glassiness jolted me from my reverie. Room 7 had been commandeered for another twilight of learning. My workshop, nestled on the second deck of the Arctic Ambassador, glimmered with the harsh white light of overhead fluorescence, a breathless spotlight for my carefully crafted gems. I turned my back on the view of the endless, desolate blue, jagged icebergs shimmering in the pale sun that barely peeked through the veil of clouds, and faced the cluttered tables scattered with tools and gemstones. Curtains of silence hung heavily, merging with the tension that seemed to thrum beneath the ship's metallic skin. Each gem I touched felt electric, and the hard surface beneath my fingers resonated with purpose. I had been mulling over designs, templates I had printed and taped to the wall, as if the very act of creation could pull me into a world that was mine. But even here, I couldn't escape the undercurrents surging just beneath the surface of this precious sanctuary. Elias was at the back of the room, his gaze focused on the icy landscape outside, his silhouette framed by the window that overlooked the great expanse, smoldering with so much unspoken complexity. I could almost see the thoughts turning in his head, cogs of ambition and hidden desires interlocking in that mind of his. It's quite the distraction, isn't it? I commented, my voice weaving through the silence as I slid the diamond onto the velvet pad and glanced at him. His profile was striking, each feature carved sharp against the indigo twilight, inviting yet foreboding. More than you know, he murmured, a flicker of something, longing, glinted in his eyes before he turned completely toward me, his gaze burning into mine. What are you working on? Nothing, I said hastily, brushing my hands on my apron as if I could wipe away the weight of those indecipherable feelings. Just a few ideas. I'm trying to focus on the upcoming exhibit. I didn't want to share. Not yet. Not after I had discovered what I had. Elias stepped closer, his footsteps silent over the plush carpet. His presence enveloped the room, stirring the air between us in a heady mix of intensity and something dangerously seductive. The granite laid down as the heart of a piece, the stones tumbling like thoughts, he said, his voice deep, a soft rumble that resonated in my chest. But what about your heart, Zuri? What are you hiding there? I held my breath, the air thick with the pause that stretched between us. I'm not hiding anything, I whispered, but even as I said it, my mind flitted to the envelope that had landed in my lap just yesterday. Clear proof of his financial assistance, of the Bint's place to recuperate my company after everything. My hands tingled with the conflicting passion of betrayal and admiration, not only for his ambition, but also for the very thought that he had watched over me in silence. The tension was palpable, a taut string stretched to its limit, vibrating with every unspoken word. "Zuri," he said slowly, "you don't see yourself as others do. You fought for this life, for your dreams. You deserve every bit of it. And you deserve to be honest with me," I shot back, feeling a rush of anger drown out my confusion. I turned back to my table, but the confrontation held me captive, drawn to the heat radiating off him. "Do you have any idea how it feels to know that someone holds the keys to your life without your knowledge?" Silence enveloped us again, more potent than the piercing cold outside. He moved closer, my heart racing as I fought to contain the hurricane of emotions. "If I told you everything now, Zuri, the truth may shatter whatever walls you've built around yourself. Are you ready for that?" "Yes," I breathed, though a part of me recoiled at the very thought. Elias stepped closer, showing me facets of himself I had not yet seen. With one deft movement, he reached for my jaw, lifting my gaze, piercing my defenses with a look that made my nerve endings flare. The tension coiling in my belly felt like a wildflower, struggling to bloom in a frostbitten landscape. "You're angry, but underneath that anger is desire. You can feel it, can't you?" His low voice caressed my senses, coursing through me like a thrilling current. "I don't trust easily," I admitted, contradicting the wild thrum igniting in my heart. Not after everything." The rage had yet to shake itself free, yet the intensity sparking in his eyes called to me like a moth to flame. "Neither do I, Zuri," he confessed, so raw that it cut through the lingering tension. "It's not easy for me either." With an exhale, I let my anger give way to trust, at least for this moment. I took a step closer, my heart racing against my ribcage. "Then perhaps we should strip away our armor, Elias. No more secrets. No more assumptions." A ghost of a smile grazed his lips, utterly worn beneath the ice, and with a sudden spark of adrenaline, he filled the space between us, encasing my hands within his as he lowered his voice. "What if I told you that even the darkest secrets can be the spark of something beautiful?" "Oh, really?" I challenged, resisting a smile. "And what if I said that's a romantic notion I'd be willing to test?" His fingers caressed the skin beneath my wrists, a gentle stroke that made my breath hitch. The world outside melted into a blur as his gaze grew heavy with unmasked desire. An invisible thread tightened around my center, each heartbeat syncing with the unspoken agreement formed between us. There was no more holding back. We understood. "I've been waiting for the moment you'd be ready," he breathed against my ear. And suddenly the laundry list of complications seemed to evaporate into thin air. All that remained was the possibility, the call of intimacy lapping at the edges of my heart, surging through me like a tide. But just then, a loud knock interrupted, echoing sharply against our fragile bubble. "Zuri, you in there?" Khadijah's voice burst through, buoyant and chaotic, a stark contrast to the electrifying connection thrumming between Elias and me. I pulled away, my cheeks flush, the moment severed. "What do you need?" I called, attempting to mask the breathlessness in my tone. "Zuri, grab your notes. You have to help me think through my presentation," Khadijah chirped, bouncing past my door, as I exhaled sharply, realizing how each interruption was soldering our chances at intimacy. "I'm not sure it's a good time," I said, half-heartedly wishing I could just close the door and, well, forget everything but the feeling of Elias's breath against my skin. "Come on, you know you want to," Khadijah persisted. I exchanged looks with Elias, feeling the moments slip through my fingers like grains of sand. But the fire between us ignited again, undeniable and wild. Elias leaned in, just close enough for his lips to hover by my ear. "We can find our moment," he murmured, a challenge threaded through the silence, making my pulse race. "Maybe," I said, steeling myself against the embarrassment heating my cheeks. "But we can at least pretend to finish this conversation later." A chuckle escaped his lips, the sound low and warm, wrapping around my thoughts. "I promise it won't take long." I waved Khadija inside, my heart escalating with every step she took. It felt almost invasive yet exhilarating, pulling me from possibilities back to my ambition-laden reality. But as I watched the door open and my friend's vibrant energy spill into the space, I couldn't shake the heat igniting within me, the promise of more, the anticipation of an unabashed confrontation with desires I had long locked away. And beneath it all, the specter of what Elias had unwittingly foreshadowed loomed, that love, at its core, was a dance between trust and vulnerability, even amidst the shimmering chaos of our lives. Zuri, Khadija flashed her broad smile. We're going to take the world by storm, you and I. And if I'm right, you'll help me figure out the right accessory to draw eyes to my stunning presentation. With a swirl of laughter and camaraderie, the weight of my affairs mingled with fleeting joy. The excitement surged, but as I glanced over my shoulder, Elias remained tethered to the mystery, a promise of something uncharted yet intoxicating, simmering just beneath the heat of our conversation. Sure, let's get to it. I pulled my notes forward, returning yet already half excited at the thought of the secrets the night may still unveil. The world outside my window felt both expansive and inviting, the horizon littered with endless possibilities, each whispering of the love that evaded me, yet beckoned me closer with each passing moment. Just you wait, I murmured to myself as the laughter of friends filled the room, resonating with the newfound energy blooming quietly behind my heart. The night was young, and I could feel Elias burning bright in the shadowy edges of my mind, just waiting for his moment to pull me back into his orbit. Chapter 6: Saboteurs Among Us. With the ice pressing against the hull of the Aurora, a constant reverberating thrum resonated throughout the vessel, a chorus of creaks and groans that was both unnerving and oddly beautiful. I stared out at the endless white, the starkness of the Antarctic landscape reflecting the turmoil swirling within me. Breathe, Zuri. Just breathe. Yet every breath felt heavy, punctuated by the absence of clarity. 5 weeks into this expedition, and still nothing more than whispers and rumors swirled around the fellow crew members. The tension was palpable, simmering just below the surface, a fact I tried to ignore by throwing myself into my work. I was here to design the centerpiece for the Elysium Gala, a project that mattered to me deeply, but the pressure mounted like the ice trenching its claws into our fragile ship. As I squeezed the sketch pencil tighter, the door to the design studio swung open, admitting Elias Carter with a rush of cold air and palpable intensity. I turned, greeted by his familiar magnetic presence. "Zuri," he said, his voice low, laced with urgency. "Have you seen Ava?" "Ava?" I raised an eyebrow, brushing my fingers through my disheveled curls. "Last I checked, she was going on about sustainable textiles. Haven't you seen her today?" "No, and that's the problem." He stepped closer, heat radiating from him, an almost magnetic force that drew me in. "We need her for the presentation to the sponsors tonight. There are rumors that she's been speaking with some competitors." As he spoke, my stomach twisted, tension flooding my veins. "Rumors? They're more than that. I'm concerned she's stirring something that could rip our project apart." He let out a breath, his posture shifting, the space between us shrinking. The need to lighten the moment shot through me like adrenaline. "Elias, maybe she's just trying to get ahead in the game. Have you considered that small talk might just be small talk?" His lips quirked into a half smile, the tension slightly dissipating. "And here I thought you were the first one to dive into the gossip pool." "Only when there are sharks," I shot back, crossing my arms defensively, though my heart raced with something entirely different. With a sudden jarring clang, an alarm blared, shattering the thin shield of levity. Elias and I exchanged glances. Tension spiraled back into the air like a spiral of smoke. My mind raced. Whatever was happening, it was serious. "Let's investigate," he urged, his hand closing over mine with an easy confidence that sent a jolt through me. I swallowed hard and nodded, following him into the corridor, where the lights flickered ominously. The thick scent of machine oil invaded my senses, and the vibrations of panic rippled through the ship. We dashed past crew members, their faces chiseled with anxiety, and nearly collided with Sam, our logistics manager. "Zuri, Elias, it's bad," he exclaimed, voice tinged with fear. "The engine room is iced over. We're losing power." "What do you mean? How did that happen?" Elias pressed, a deep furrow forming between his brows. "I don't know, but we think it might have been sabotaged," Sam replied, his voice quaking slightly as he glimpsed around us, eyes wide. "Sabotaged?" The word tasted bitter on my tongue. "By who?" "Probably one of the competitors," Sam stammered. "They're desperate to win this contract and would do anything to take us down." Elias tightened his grip, and resolve coursed through me. "Then we need to find who's behind it. This expedition isn't over yet." We raced towards the heart of the ship, navigating the labyrinth of metal and machinery, adrenaline fueling each swift step. My breath mingled with Elias's, the rapid rhythm of our pulses echoing amid the chaos. "Zuri," he paused, gripping my shoulders gently as we stepped into the engine room. "We'll face this together. I won't let anything happen to you." Something warm unfurled in my chest. "I trust you." The words slipped from my lips, quiet yet resolute. His gaze deepened, lingering on me as if he could see past my bravado, down to the layers of fear and ambition woven together inside. "Good. We'll need that trust." The engine whirred, but cautiously. Ice crystals formed slickly along the machinery, glinting dangerously. The crew was hard at work. I spotted Ava, her brows knitted, poring over schematics, blissfully unaware of the chaos lurking behind her. "Zuri," she called, spotting me. "Help me with this." Before she finished, the ship jolted violently, sending us careening toward each other. I grasped onto Elias for balance, our bodies colliding with a delicious intensity that sent a thrill down my spine. I felt the world fall still for a brief electric second, his warmth enveloping me. The chaos fell away, becoming white noise. "This isn't the time, Zuri," he added, his tone a mixture of urgency and restraint, though the playful glint in his eyes betrayed his thoughts. "I think we have bigger fish to fry." I grinned, the tension ebbing slightly in the face of looming disaster. But that damper didn't last as another wrenching crunch echoed through the hull. Panic stirred. I felt Elias's hand on the small of my back as we set off in search of answers. "I swear to you," Elias's voice dipped low, almost conspiratorial, "if I find out who's behind all this—" "No one's coming after us," I interrupted, the words slicing through me. "We're not there yet." The realization hit me. If there was a saboteur among us, someone close, it sent chills racing across my skin. "Let's check the storage unit. They might have left clues behind," he proposed, breaking through my disrupting thoughts. The memory of our earlier confrontation flickered in my mind. Could it be Ava getting too close to a competitor? The implications twisted like a snake in my gut. What if she plays us all against each other? "Focus, Zuri." Elias caught my gaze, imbuing me with a spark of determination. "Look at me. We'll figure this out." Wasting no time, we sprinted toward the storage unit, where supplies were housed. As I twisted the knob to enter, Elias's hand brushed mine in the most casual way, sending electricity through me. "Locks," he stated, brow furrowing once more. "A break-in can disguise everything. I need you to stay here while I check." "No way," I retorted, adrenaline surging through my veins as the door swung open with a hasty shove. The storage room was dim, the air thick with dust and the scent of metal. I hesitated, glancing back at him, a silent understanding passing between us. "I'm not letting you do this alone." "Fine," he relented, stepping into the space, "but stay close." As we scoured the area, my heart raced, not just from the pursuit of a possible criminal, but from the constant proximity to Elias. With each whispered exchange concerning tools and materials, I could feel the tension thickening between us. Layering desire on top of power, an intoxicating mixture. Then, as we rummaged, Elias paused, pulling out a wad of papers, his expression darkening. "Look at this," he said, holding up an architectural layout. "It's the schematics for our engine. These blueprints are wrong. Someone altered them." Disbelief coursed through me. "That's sabotage." "Exactly." The muscles in his jaw clenched, and a sudden gravity hung in the air. "Which means they were plotting against us long before we even started. Which means our project is at risk." We exchanged a glance, the cold logic mixing with the molten heat between us. Just then the lights flickered as footsteps echoed outside, heavy and urgent. "Quick," Elias whispered, ducking behind the stacks. I held my breath, my heart pounding in time with the rapid crunch of boots nearing. The door swung open, revealing a curious face. Ava stepped in, oblivious to the shared moment lurking in the shadows. "Zuri?" She looked around, faux innocence painted across her features. "Elias?" He put a finger to his lips and motioned for quiet. I flicked my eyes to him. I could sense his protective instincts kicking in. "What's going on? Have you seen nothing?" Elias cut her off sharply, emerging from the shadows. "We're just checking supplies. You should be focusing on the presentation." Ava's eyes sharpened, but then she managed a smirk. "You know you two look terribly suspicious, right?" I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, and Elias smirked back, his expression unreadable. "We're fine, Ava. Focus on what lies ahead." But her gaze pierced through, a flicker of doubt crossing her face. "Sure, whatever you say." As she left, a wave of relief cascaded through me, though the threat lingered. What if she knows something? She can't. Uncertainty plays in our favor. At that moment, a burst of emotion surged, fear, desire, and a craving for connection as our bodies brushed together in a shared space too small, too intimate. "I need you to promise me something," I murmured, my voice barely above a whisper, my heart racing. Elias's eyes locked onto mine. Anything. If only he knew the depth of that promise, the risk I'd have to take with my heart as we fought against looming threats. "Stay close to me," I breathed, the desire slipping through me unchecked. With a sudden primal instinct, I leaned in, capturing his lips with mine. Electricity sparked at the edges of my consciousness as he responded immediately, pulling me closer, deepening the kiss. His hands tangled in my hair, guiding me into the warmth of his embrace. I melted against him, consumed by the need igniting between us, the urgency of our situation amplifying every sensation. "Zuri," he murmured against my lips, but I could feel the words trapped between us, twined with unspoken bonds woven in the stillness around us. And in that moment, surrounded by the impending chaos of the expedition and the uncertainty of our future, I tasted the heady elixir of desire, melded with urgency. Reality loomed beyond us, filled with saboteurs and secrets. But for now, we were lost in the depths of one another, our own fortress amid the ice. I pulled away, breathless. "We're not done yet." "Not by a long shot," he replied, fierce determination mirrored in the depths of his gaze. "This isn't just about survival. We will turn the tide." Every word ignited something within me, a throbbing pulse of ambition, a promise of boundaries pushed beyond mere survival. Together, we would claim our destiny. The stakes were high, but so were our spirits. In this icy arena, I refused to let a saboteur rip apart what we could forge together. Narrowing my eyes, I whispered, "Let's find out who we're truly up against." Chapter 7. A Troubling Revelation. The air in the ship is thick with the hum of hushed conversations and the metallic tinkle of ice against glass as we forge ahead, imprisoned in this white wilderness. The walls of the observation deck glisten like the translucent belly of a fish, sunlight refracting into a million splintered colors. But the brilliance does little to warm the chill creeping into my bones. As I stand at the large panoramic window overlooking the inexorable vastness of ice, my heart sinks a little more with each oscillation of fear and anger coursing through me. Endless expanse stretches out beyond, a frozen fortress. My thoughts drift. There's comfort in the perpetual clarity of the polar landscape, but it colors my heart in shades much grayer than the pristine whites outside. Elias's presence shifts in my periphery. I don't have to look to feel the gravitational pull that he has over this deck. My stomach tightens, the awareness of him adjoining my fragmented focus. He stands at the far end, casually leaning against a column with his arms crossed, a striking silhouette draped in shadows cast by the floor-to-ceiling windows. I can't tell if I crave his attention or dread the spark that ignites when I'm near him. "Penny for your thoughts?" Elias's voice, so smooth it could carve its way through the ice, pulls me from my reverie. My eyes flick to him, and warmth blooms in my cheeks, despite the fear swelling inside me. "Thoughts are expensive today," I reply, squaring my shoulders, then returning my gaze to the ice. "Seems like the temperature has plummeted in here too." His chuckle dances through the air, both enticing and disarming. "You mean outside? Or are you referring to what happens when you get hit with one too many surprises?" "That too," I retort, my pulse quickening, tangled in the nexus of our connection. The uncertainty of the situation grips me tighter than any embrace he could offer. Lucien, the mere mention of my former mentor's name makes my skin itch. Dramatic revelations about my past and the manipulations that lurked behind kind smiles seem to twist in my gut. I can't shake the feeling that he's behind the sabotage. I know he has the resources, but this, I didn't want to believe it. "He's good at playing the long game, but Zuri, you can't let him get to you. Your work is exquisite. He just wants to provoke you, undermine you. His confidence is fuel for my fire, yet it stirs something darker inside me. But why? What drives him? Wasn't he my mentor?" The smallest crack of vulnerability breaks through my hardened facade. Some people want to keep it all in their hands, and they can't stand seeing others succeed. The fierceness of his gaze bores into mine, and it's like an electric current surges between us, warming me through the icy chill of dread surrounding our reality. A sudden laugh erupts from across the room. I turn to see Hannah, our spirited operations manager, drenched in her bright red parka, animatedly gesturing to Jordan, our equipment specialist. Their lighthearted banter buffers the tension in the room, momentarily wrestling me away from my spiraling thoughts. "You two look like you're plotting world domination over there," she shouts, laughter rolling through like a welcome summer breeze over the Antarctic tundra. I momentarily relish in the absurdity of her humor. "Or just contemplating the next good book," Jordan replies, smirking, blissfully unaware of the brewing storm weighing heavily on my mind. "What's the verdict, Zuri? Did you discover the secret to it all?" "More like discovering layers of deception," I murmur, glancing sideways at Elias. I can't tell if he picks up on my slip or if he's distracted by Hannah's animated storytelling. Trust me, the last thing I want is Lucian's shadow lingering over us. Elias leans in, lowering his voice to a conspiratorial whisper, but it booms louder in my chest. "You are not your past, Zuri. There's so much ahead of you. You have my support. Just don't give him power over your narrative." His words light a fierce determination in my heart, igniting something deeper as my pulse quickens and my breath catches. His nearness is intoxicating, a whirlwind of energy swirling around us. If only I could bottle that sensation and dip my toe in it whenever I faltered. "I know you're right, but it's hard. He's everywhere in my head." "Then you need to take control. Show him you're stronger than his manipulation. Admit one thing, and it'll break his hold." "What's that?" "Admit that you're not afraid to embrace your ambition. It's time to own your desires, both personal and professional," he says, locking eyes with me. There's a tension brewing beneath the surface. My heart beats harder with every challenge wrapped in those dark, gentle eyes. "Are you actually suggesting I confess my ambitions to Lucian? Because that seems like a disastrous rendezvous." "Not to him. He inches closer, invading my personal space with intoxicating confidence. To yourself, what do you truly desire? In that moment, the air crackles with anticipation. We hover on a precipice, wrestling against that fine line between self-actualization and vulnerability. The warmth within me spreads, battling against the icy chill scratching at the edges of my resolve. Elias, He grips my wrist, the gentle squeeze sending syrupy warmth radiating through me. His touch releases a flurry of sparks, unspooling like a ribbon caught in a gale. Don't underestimate yourself, Zuri. My heart races, thoughts muddied by renewed conviction and the undeniable chemistry spiraling between us. The walls of the ship seem to narrow, enveloping us in a world all our own. The sudden clang of metal drums snaps me from our momentary connection, followed by a string of muffled voices erupting from the direction of the kitchen. I break away, and the spell shatters. Should we check that before it turns into a full-blown fire? Elias releases a low chuckle, masking the storm he must be feeling as well. Maybe your mentor is sabotaging both dinner and our mental state. I laugh, the tension releasing momentarily, but the unease lingers just below the surface. If you hear Hannah cussing out the oven, we know he's behind it. Though honestly, she's a pro with her one-liners. As we weave through the din of people galvanizing in the small kitchen space, I can't help but feel a tightening of resolve in my chest. Whatever Lucien's ploys were, I was determined to rise above them, to reclaim myself and my work, and maybe this blossoming connection with Elias. Can we talk later? Elias draws closer, the way his breath lightly tickles my ear, sending vibration down to my very core. Absolutely, I reply, barely above a whisper, but a quick flick of his eyes reveals the heat beneath the surface of our playful banter. Then, as though the universe has a plan of its own, a loud crash abruptly shatters our moment. Jordan's arm clumsily sends a stack of plates tumbling to the floor, breaking the spell we'd woven around ourselves. I swear it was the ouse. He quickly stoops down to gather the wreckage, while the room erupts into laughter. Yeah, right. Hannah shoots him a teasing glare. You're just trying to cover for your awful aim. I can't help but join them, the air now filled with laughter and soothing camaraderie, but under my smile lies the flicker of something more complex. As I laugh with our friends, my heart flares with determination. Lucien has tried to entrap me in webs he spun himself. He would learn this time. I would not be his pawn. There's a battle ahead, but it starts here, I murmur under my breath, barely aware if anyone else catches the determination laced within that whisper. Elias turns his gaze towards me, and a knowing smile plays on his lips. And you're ready to win, Zuri. Perhaps I am. Perhaps this frozen sea is where I'll find the fire I've long buried, and the courage to embrace not only my ambition, but everything I deserve. Watch me. Even as I say it, beneath the warmth in my voice, my heart dances nervously to the rhythm of love, desire, and fierce ambition. With every beat, I know I'm on the cusp of something transformative, within myself and with Elias, whose very existence pushes me to stake my claim on both my heart and my dreams. Let's handle this like adult geniuses at play, I add, not like skating toddlers trying not to fall. Now that's a sight I'd pay to see. And with that, the stage is set. Swords drawn, our hearts bare, and the icy expanse of possibility beckoning beyond the horizon. Chapter 8. Dark Shadows. The dimly lit lounge of the Aurora Dreams felt heavier tonight, the air thick with tension, and the cold in the sails of my heart. I sat at the edge of my chair, the smooth leather cool against my bare legs, inhaling the mingled scents of aged whiskey and cedarwood, as memories flickered in and out like the candle flames adorning the bar. My fingers traced the rim of my glass, every circle around its surface echoing my chaotic thoughts. Elias was across the room, his silhouette hauntingly magnetic, deeply charged. His presence was both a comfort and a league of ice. I was lost in the whirlpool of our unspoken desires. I took a breath, steadying my nerves, and reminding myself why I was here. The sharp, crisp melody of laughter cut through the hum of the lounge, where my mentor, Genevieve, had gathered her motley crew of art dealers and supporters. I forced a smile as the shadows played across her animated face, but it faded when her gaze latched onto Elias. "Zuri," Genevieve boomed, her voice vibrant. "Are you going to introduce me, or shall I just assume he's another one of your very charming acquaintances?" Her words, laced with irony, hung heavily between us. The edges of my vision tunneled in on Elias, who turned to meet my eyes. His unmistakable intensity amplified my unease. I shifted my weight, the cool air now feeling more constricting than refreshing. "Genevieve, this is Elias Carter. He's—" I hesitated, my mind racing. How can I introduce the man who had both rebuilt my world and shattered my concentration with mere playfulness? "Charmed, I'm sure," Genevieve said, her voice practically dripping with amusement. "You have quite the talent for attracting the intriguing ones, Zuri." "Interesting to know you consider me intriguing," Elias interjected smoothly, graying the line between confidence and arrogance, "though I'd say Zuri's the one with talent, yes?" The tension hung like a tightrope between us, taut and trembling. Genevieve's eyes narrowed as she analyzed the unspoken alliances forming before her. "I think ambition is at the heart of it. Isn't that so, Zuri? Or are you too busy chasing after unpredictability?" "Ambition is never too accommodating," I shot back, my voice steady despite the quake inside me, "and unpredictability can be a necessity for growth." Elias's eyes flashed with mischief, igniting a spark behind my ribs. But before he could respond, Genevieve's laughter resonated unpredictably, and the moment ruptured, the crowd growing loud in festive disagreement. "Oh, darling, the journey towards ambition is littered with all sorts of depravity and unexpected pleasures," she said, raising her glass. "Let's have a toast to that." In a flash, I saw the room filled with eager faces, taking part in her chaotic revelry. Laughter echoed, drowning the undercurrents swirling around me. I desperately wanted to share in their energy, but instead I was tethered to the gravity of Elias's presence. "Can we have a moment?" I said, gesturing toward the stern corner of the room, a move that might have felt sudden to anyone else. My heart pounded against my ribcage, a quiet battle of wanting to flee and yearning to embrace this man who had carved a space in my life. Elias straightened, that glint of warmth in his eyes now shrouded by an air of intrigue. "Lead the way," he said, following closely behind, and our footsteps echoed against the polished floor, resonating with unspoken electricity. Once out of earshot, I leaned against the wall of the ship, the steel beneath me cold and immovable. "What's going on with Genevieve?" I blurted, irritated he hadn't warned me we'd be in such company. "Why do you think she's questioning the company you keep?" Elias retorted, crossing his arms. The streetlights filtering through the porthole painted him in shades of blue, deepening the mystery around his guarded demeanor. "She's testing you, Zuri." "Testing?" I scoffed, too offended to recognize I was cornering myself into a defensive posture. "She knows nothing about my ambitions." "Doesn't she?" He leaned closer, his voice low yet firm, eyes narrowing. "You think Genevieve doesn't know your history? She's watching closely, waiting for you to stumble. You don't just walk back into the elite circle after everything else." "Someone had to pick up the pieces." My voice softened, vulnerability creeping through the cracks in my stern facade. "I'm still me. Being here doesn't erase that." He stepped closer, his breath warming the air between us. "Then why allow her to make you question your path?" The intensity in his gaze ignited a frisson of heat across my skin. "You're stronger than this, Zuri, and you know it. She's trying to provoke you." "Provoke or prepare?" I tried to hold my ground, but the truth was unraveling faster than I could stitch it together. Was she rooting for me, or dragging my past into the harsh light of scrutiny? His fingers brushed against my arm, a light yet electrifying touch. In that moment, something uncoiled tightly within me, a primal instinct to lean closer. But before I succumbed to the lure of his warmth, The past rushed in, gusting like the ice-locked winds outside. Are you protecting me from her, or from yourself? Zuri, he started, his voice lowering as if he were preparing to draw me into a secret. Some things are worth the risk, but trust, after everything, you question my intentions? What do you want from me? I let the words fall from my lips like confessions carved in ice. You rebuilt my life. Why is that never enough? That silence swelled, the distance between us tautened as the moment stretched, breathing heavily like the ship itself as it cried against the icy embrace. Because, he replied, his breaths mingling with the cold, I want you to trust me unreservedly. I want all of you, not just what you think I need. The invitation surged between us and ruptured the air with a vividness I'd never experienced. Quick as lightning, I grasped his shirt collar, pulling him into me as my lips found his with a desperation unrehearsed. I tasted whiskey and longing, an intoxicating mix that ignited my whole being. Passion surged through every nerve ending as I pressed against him, his hands sliding up my arms, encasing my shoulders in a grip that felt like home. The world around us receded, leaving only the pulse of our shared heartbeat, quick and unyielded to restraint. I heard the faint rustle of fabric as an urgency propelled us further into the wildfire of desire. Zuri, he breathed against my lips, and I crushed my mouth against his, hungry, starving for more. I needed to escape the judgments, the betrayals swirling in my head. Here, it was just the raw honesty between us, the taste of possibilities unfurling. The kiss deepened, turning feverish as our bodies collided with blissful violence, my hands tangling in his hair. The world around us faded to an echo, consumed by the fierce splendor of our chaotic intimacy. I wasn't going to let you go. I gasped between breaths, my heart racing like I was plunging into an uncharted abyss. Then don't, ululated Elias, his fingers trailing down my spine, exciting goosebumps. No more hesitation, no more doubt. As we melted into each other, the walls surrounding us, walls that had once seemed like fortifications, crumbled with each stroke of Elias's hands on my skin. His fierce resolve igniting every nerve, every wild thought I'd buried beneath my ambitions. Intense longing surged and swept me off my feet as I responded to his every touch, causing electric shivers. The cold steel walls exposed me to the breath of frigid air. Yet against Elias, I burned like a furnace. The kiss deepened, a tempest within me releasing all-consuming warmth. Moments later, we collided into the plush seating, but there was nothing soft about our urgency. My hands eagerly traveled lower, surrendering to the gravity between us, as Elias explored my silhouette with cautious ferocity, brushing the long line of my waist and the curves that felt tantalizingly exposed beneath his touch. Zuri, he murmured with a mix of awe and fervor, his lips trailing fiery paths against my neck. My breath hitched, a surge of passion rising sharp and unyielding. God, I've waited too long for this. He pulled me closer, every movement deliberate, yet filled with an energy that hinted at the unpredictable nature of our relationship. And for the first time, I let the walls of my carefully constructed world come crashing down, reveling in the blistering desire to claim this moment, this man, completely. As I surrendered to the thrill of passion rolling through us, I understood in that shimmering moment that love isn't just about the struggle. It's raw, fierce, and breathtaking. Then let's make it last, I whispered against his ear, feeling my heart race as clarity poured into my soul like liquid gold. Trust me, Zuri. It's only just begun, he murmured back, urgency brewing in every syllable. Outside, the winds howled against the ship, but within this sanctuary of breath and heat, everything unfurled. Heat, urgency, and the full realization that love could be as frantic and electrifying as it was secure. In the grand sweep of our unexpected adventure, we would face the dark shadows together, resolute, our hearts entwined in a story waiting to be lived. End of Chapter 8. Chapter 9. Falling Through Ice. Where were you when I needed you the most? I demanded, my voice sharp as the chill of the Antarctic air. The sharpness of the words collided with the frigid atmosphere, sparking an electric tension between Elias and me. Ice creaked beneath our feet, a foreboding reminder of our precarious circumstances. Elias's brow furrowed, the lines of his face etched deeper by the dim light, filtering through the icy confines of the ship. A heavy silence fell, stretching between us, an expanse of unspoken words and heavy emotions. I almost felt the pulse of the crevasse beneath, a hum of danger beckoning at the edges of my consciousness. "Zuri," he said finally, his voice low and calm, the way he always approached storms. Steady, unwavering, but coiled like a taut wire. "You know that's not fair. I have been right here." He gestured between us, his hands mere inches from mine. "Right here?" I retorted, taking a step back. The Spartan cabin around us felt exponentially smaller. Watching silently while I fell apart, while everything I've worked for began to slip through my fingers like sand. Elias took a breath, his gaze piercing through the depths of my turmoil. "You think I wanted to just stand by? You barely let me in, Zuri. You wanted to struggle through this yourself, didn't you?" I threw my hands up in exasperation, the frustration boiling just below the surface. Maybe I needed to find my strength on my own. But I can't do that with a ghost hovering over me. The crevasse cracked open beneath us, an immense chasm of ice and fear. I stumbled, feeling the ground shift, the world momentarily tilting. Elias lunged forward, gripping my wrist with fierce determination. "Whenever you run from the truth, it always leads to a fall," he said, his voice a rumble of intensity. I could feel my heart thundering in tandem with his words, the weight of what we had both avoided crashing down like a glacier at the edge of a cliff. "Admit it, Elias. You enjoyed playing savior," I shot back, pulling away from his grip, yet battling the instinct to lean into him instead. "You're a knight in shining armor who won't let the damsel drown, but you're always just out of reach." "Stop." His tone cut through my anger, forcing me still. "Stop acting like this is a game. You think I don't feel your resistance? That I haven't seen you suffering? Every time you shut me out, it's like a blade twisting in my gut." A pause wrapped around us, thick with the weight of our uncharted territory. I could almost hear the crackling ice in the distance, a reminder that every moment could turn perilous. "You have no idea how to navigate my storm," I whispered, the anger ebbing to a raw vulnerability. "Teach me," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper, as he stepped closer. The wall between us began to shimmer, melting beneath the warmth of our shared breath. "Let me in. I promise you won't drown." The challenge thrummed between us, the intensity of his stare coaxing a crack in my veneer. I hated how much I longed for him to be that lighthouse, the undeniable beacon slicing through the fog of my fears. With a reckless impulse, I dared to sift through those long-buried emotions. "I don't want you hovering like a guardian angel, Elias. I want you here with me, fighting beside me, like an equal." My frustration danced too close to pleading, but I couldn't hold back. "Not anymore." "Then let's fight together." His voice, low and insistent, ignited the sparks of something deeper. "Hiding from the truth only strengthens the lies." A sudden crack echoed from the ice below, slicing through the tension like a knife. In that instant, both of us felt it. The imminent threat, the rifting beneath. The ground shuddered, jolting us from our argument. Elias reached for my arm again, his touch igniting a dangerous mix of fear and desire. "Hold on to me," he shouted as the floor trembled violently, and before I could respond, the ice beneath us gave way, plunging us down into the frigid crevasse, a tumble of white and black, the world blurring to nothing. I gasped as the icy water enveloped me. It was sharp and numbing, a visceral reminder of my vulnerability. I could hardly see, but I felt him next to me, his presence a powerful anchor amidst the chaotic rush of disorientation. The fluid chaos began to spin, and each second felt both suspended and excruciating. We broke through the surface together, clawing our way back to reality, choking on gasps of air as we stumbled back onto what remained of the solid ground. Elias's arms encircled me, grounding me, his heart beating wildly against my chest. His protectiveness enveloped us both, a combination of urgency and something deeper, an undeniable heat coursing through my veins. My head spun, the adrenaline coursing through my system like fire. I turned my face up to him, breathless, momentarily lost in the vivid blue of his eyes. That was, I began, but faltered, searching for the right words in the aftermath of terror. Insane, he finished, a flicker of mischief breaking through the gravity of our earlier fight. A little exhilarating, if you ask me. I managed a wobbly smile, my heart still racing. You're insane. Only when it comes to you. His smile deepened, the warmth of it melting the tension between us. His voice softened. But I can't let you slip away like that again, Zuri. Not ever. A fragility settled in the space between us, taut, yet somehow inviting. The echoes of our fierce argument lingered, but now they felt like shadows, dissipating in light of what we had just endured together. Can you promise that? I asked, my voice low, almost imploring. He stepped closer, closing the gap between our bodies, wrapping a hand around my waist. I can promise you this. I will never let anyone hurt you again. I will always protect you. A surge of warmth flooded through me, crossing the chasm of our conflict. Swallowing hard, I found the courage to bridge the remaining distance. And what if it's me hurting myself? Then we'll tackle that too. Together, he said, the corner of his mouth curling in that alluring way that sent another rush of warmth flooding my cheeks. In that moment, the fleeting chaos found its calm, still drumming beneath our skin. All at once, a shared intimacy surged between us, uniting in a way that felt irrevocably raw and powerful. The air shimmered, heavy with the echoes of what we had shared, both the thrill of danger and the stinging realization of our emotional vulnerabilities. It surged forth, drowning out everything else, leaving only the fiery tension that danced around us. And before I could think, I was answering the unspoken invitation as I pulled him down to me, crashing our lips together. The kiss was fierce and electric, igniting the very marrow in my bones, a synchrony between our hearts and desires. Elias responded immediately, his breath warm and inviting against my skin, as our bodies melded together, a fervent collision of passion and longing. His fingertips gripped my chin, tilting my head back, opening me up further as though he were claiming the very essence of me. I lost myself in the flames of heated intimacy. The chill of the ice faded away, replaced by the ferocity of our connection, an all-consuming fire that burned hotter with every gentle exploration of his hands along my waist, and the soft sighs that escaped my lips. Elias pressed me against the snow-dusted wall of the cabin, his hands tracing along my sides, mapping my contours with a knowing ferocity. Every touch ignited a breathless urgency, my body responding to his like a moth to the flame. "You drive me insane," he murmured against my lips, in the best possible way. "Good," I gasped, the thrill coursing through every pore as his hands tangled in my hair, pulling me closer. Each press of his lips against mine seemed to blossom, a secret language that spoke volumes about what we both feared and what we both craved. With every kiss drawn deeper and every breath shared, I became lost in the exploration of Elias. The smooth contours of his shoulders beneath my fingers, the warmth radiating from him despite the endless ice beyond. "Stop thinking," he growled, the heat of his breath brushing against my ear, "and just let go." As if I could, I finally surrendered to him, to this moment, to the way he made me feel, wild and free, yet held tightly within his embrace. The world around us faded, and all that mattered were the pulsing beats of our hearts and the breath of our longing. We fell into the rhythm of shared passion, urgency driving each kiss and touch. The push and pull of his body against mine, sending electrifying jolts through my veins. We were two forces, colliding in the most beautiful chaos, igniting every part of this frozen sanctuary with our heat. Amidst the remnants of icy walls and unyielding threats lurking just beyond our sanctuary, we found solace in each other. Every shared breath, every lingering kiss was a promise wrapped in a whisper. We would not give in, we would not break. A moment of clarity pierced the haze, a glimpse of what lay ahead, the battles we would face together. Our fears might linger, but the ice above us would not stop this fire we were igniting. And as I drew back for a breath, our foreheads touching, "Whatever it takes, Elias, I want to fight." "Together," he affirmed, a smile breaking his controlled tone, turning desperate to thirst. The world around us might have been frozen in despair, but we were thawing through each other, inch by exhilarating inch. And for the first time, I feel it swell within me. A promise, as potent as the warmth between us, that this love might conquer the darkest depths of the ice. As our lips met again, the reality outside our haven faded into a distant whisper, and I knew the ice might be formidable, but together we were unstoppable. Chapter 10. Conflicting Loyalties. "Are you really going to stand there and pretend this isn't happening?" Elias's voice cut through the dimly lit lounge of the Aurora's breath, sharp as the icebergs pressing unyieldingly against the hull. The ship creaked, a low, ominous sound that echoed my own internal turmoil. I crossed my arms, the chill from the floorboards creeping up through my cashmere socks. "Maybe I am. Maybe you're just another distraction I don't have time for," I shot back, feigning nonchalance, while my heart raced beneath my layers. If the snowstorm outside could whip itself into a frenzy, then why couldn't the atmosphere in this room? He stepped closer, his eyes a stormy blue, flecked with darker shades. It felt personal, the way he regarded me as if he could read my most secret anxieties. "You say that as if I'm just a passing snowflake in your ambitious life, Zuri. You know I'm more than that." "Do I?" I countered, tilting my head defiantly. "A benefactor, a mentor, or perhaps just another handsome face with a dark past?" The words rushed out, emboldened by the cocktail we had shared earlier, the bourbon warming my limbs even as tension electrified the air between us. Elias took another step, closing the distance, and I could feel his breath mingling with mine, warm and potent. The skin on my arms prickled with awareness, despite my resolve to remain detached. "Do you even realize what you're suggesting? That I'm just someone who stands in the shadows?" "Maybe I do," I replied, my voice frostier than the frost-dipped windows. "Don't look at me like that, Elias. I'm not here to fall for your games." "Then why is your heart racing?" His gaze locked onto mine, catching and holding me in place. I felt like a deer trapped in a snowstorm, unable to flee as the winds howled around us. "Because I'm angry," I admitted, surprising myself with the confession. The words hung between us, heavy with unsaid implications. I wanted to be mad at him for things I couldn't even articulate, but my body betrayed me with a familiar heat. "I get it," he said, softening just a notch. "You have every reason to be, just like I have my reasons for wanting to be here." The fire crackling in the minimalist hearth cast flickering shadows on his face, a tantalizing play of light and dark, mirroring our burgeoning tensions. For just a moment, I was aware of the warmth blossoming in this icebound world, a spark that seemed entirely out of place. "Okay, let's play this game of honesty," I ventured, stepping back to put some distance between us. "What's your end game, Elias?" He didn't flinch, not this time. "To see you thrive, Zuri. I've watched you build everything from the ground up, and then the moment I stomped into your life, you seemed determined to shove me away." Because I'm not a damsel waiting to be saved. I built my future, damn it, Elias. I did it myself. I shot back, my pulse quickening again, not from anger, but from unacknowledged longing. Just then, the door swung open, and our friend Tasha breezed in with a wave of lively energy, weathered snowflakes gathering in her curls. Hey, if you two lovebirds are done talking about your feelings, there's a scotch party in the lounge, or are you planning to sizzle away here all night? I couldn't hold back a laugh, the tension breaking like the surface of brittle ice beneath a summer sun. Lovebirds? I think he's trying to convince me I need a life coach. Life coach, Elias grinned? Is that what you think I am? Oh, please. What is life without a little coaching? Tasha rolled her eyes, tossing her scarf onto the nearest armchair. You know, contra all those self-help books, sometimes just getting fired up is what you need. Yes, you're an expert at fires, I muttered, but my heart warmed at her intrusion. Tasha never failed to inject life into stale moments. Elias leaned against the wall, a playful smile playing on his lips. Fine, if I'm a life coach, I charge double for emotional breakthroughs. And I'm pretty sure there's no refund policy, I shot back, smiling despite myself. A refund would imply my coaching actually works, huh? Touché, life coach, Tasha chimed in, her laughter lightening the air. But the reality is, lovebirds, unless one of you moves this skirmish to the dance floor, we're frozen in discontent. I opened my mouth to protest, to remind Elias of the raised tension. But before I could find the words, Tasha grabbed my hand and marched us both forward, toward the elegant lounge decked in deep blues and whites, reminiscent of the icy landscape outside. Amidst crystal glasses and formidable personalities gathered for a comfortable reprieve from the tempest outside, the clash of emotions simmered inside me. How could he trigger so many conflicting feelings? Here in this bubble of luxury, sipping whiskey while the world outside remained unforgiving, I barely recognized myself. Let's get some laughter in here, shall we? Tasha clapped, earning a couple of looks from other guests. I bet you both could use a little distraction. Right, distraction, I mumbled to myself, well aware that every laugh would circle back to him, back to the undeniable pull that was becoming harder to ignore. As the evening deepened, Maria, a brilliant artist and another close friend, joined us, her vibrant persona a welcome break from the tension. Can you believe how ridiculous these ice sculptures are? She said, gesturing toward a formidable ice dragon that towered over the banquet table. They look like they belong in a children's story. Maybe that's the point, Elias quipped, chuckling, leaning against the table, as if he found comfort in this relaxed space amidst the chaos brewing beneath the surface. Giant dragons made of frozen water, and here we are collecting tales of survival. Or possibly our worst dates, I added, humor lacing the air. The water ones never seem to be as fantastic as they sound, do they? Oh, are we sharing worst date stories? I have the best one, Tasha chimed in, her eyes alight. Not if it's with that guy who thought it was okay to talk about his iguana the entire evening. Maria groaned dramatically, laughter bubbling between us. For the record, I began, fighting back laughter, any guy who pulls out pictures of his pet on a first date should honestly be escorted out of the restaurant. Exactly, Tasha rolled her eyes, taking a sip of her drink. And do you know what? None of us have ever made a move on each other's guys. But why does Zuri seem to be eyeing someone out of the corner of her eye? The joke landed, a spark igniting in the air as laughter erupted, and the focus swiveled. I turned, caught sight of Elias's grin, and realized he was not unfazed, which tortured my resolve into submission. Maybe she's just tracking her life coach's every move, Elias shot back, and my laugh turned into a gasp. Shut up, I laughed, my cheeks warming, as if there's any tracking necessary. Maria waggled her eyebrows, her sly grin totally intentional. Come on, Zuri, just admit it. There's definitely something brewing there. My heart raced. Well, I'm not one to put my business out there for the class, thank you very much. Laughter echoed, the evening spiraling into a kind of warmth I hadn't anticipated, until I caught Elias's eye again. There was something more than just mischief in his gaze, It was an unspoken promise wrapped in layers of presence, so intense I swayed slightly on my heels. Here's to our unending adventure. Tasha raised her glass, her enthusiasm infectious. We clinked glasses around the table, momentarily forgetting the tempest raging outside, or the one brewing within. Yet behind every laugh, the tension hummed. It felt as though glass shards lay scattered in the recesses of my heart. Each joke and each laugh threatened to send them spiraling deeper. And with every moment spent in this playful atmosphere, with Elias right at my side, I wrestled against my own desires. Later that night, as the laughter faded and the revelry began to drift into memories, I wandered back toward our private spaces, a mixture of emotions pulsing within me. Elias caught me just as I stepped forward into a quiet corner of the corridor, illuminated only by the cool glow of flickering lights. "Zuri," he called softly, and the way he said my name sent ripples through my stomach. I turned, preparing a witty retort, but just as the words formed, I felt anguish and tenderness collide within me like two weather fronts, dark clouds rolling in, threatening a tempest. "What now, Elias? I need you to see, before the night ends, what this is really about." His voice was low, barely audible against the backdrop of muffled laughter still echoing from the main lounge. "About what?" I asked, a sudden wave of vulnerability washing over me. "Us." His breath held the weight of moments unshared, desire threaded through unspoken vows. "You and me, tangled in ice and fire. I never wanted to be your distraction, Zuri, but you're not just my ambition. You drive me crazy." I inhaled sharply. "You think that's enough?" "Zuri, it's everything, and I'm sorry if I've made it complicated." "Complicated?" I echoed, stepping closer, the air electric. "Elias, right now everything feels like ice and flames. You need to understand, Before I could finish, he captured my face with his hands. "Let me." Then Elias leaned in, and the world melted away. The chaos, the laughter, and the repercussions of my ambitions evaporated in a single heated moment. His lips met mine with the urgency of the fiercest storm, pulling me into his embrace as if we were plucked from ice and thrust into fire. My body responded instinctively, leaning against him, surrendering to the irresistible pull, igniting the embers of something I had yet to name. Time seemed to collapse. The swelling sound of the party faded, and all that remained was the flavor of him, intoxicating against a backdrop of snow and thunder. I parted, breathless, but he wouldn't let me go. "Just one more taste, Zuri," he murmured, capturing my lips again, deeper now, releasing all those beliefs I had about independence and ambition into the ether. The kiss consumed me, fierce and tender all at once, as if he were telling me how much I mattered, how much we mattered. I was on fire, clinging to him just as fiercely, intoxicated by the fear and passion of it all. This was the truth I found myself welcoming, tangled loyalties screaming against each other as the shadows played out on the walls around us. Yet with every brush of his hand against my back, the world outside faded. I wouldn't be silenced. I would stand firm in my own power, even as I surrendered part of myself to him. When we finally pulled apart, gasping for air, Elias rested his forehead against mine, a smirk dancing on his lips. "So, is life coaching one of the things you plan on adding to the list of your ambitions?" "Shut up, Elias," I laughed breathlessly, heart still racing in delight and disbelief. "But try not to be surprised if I teach you a few things." "Wouldn't dream of it." His voice held the gravity of unyielding devotion, a challenge I felt comfortable with, but also ready to explore. "Tonight's only the beginning," I proclaimed, standing my ground, heart pounding, and that sweet wild longing bubbled, introducing a fierceness I didn't know I possessed. As the ship's hull groaned against the ice, I glanced back toward where my friends were still gathered, unaware of the tempest I'd just stirred. Steeling my resolve, I couldn't help but think, This journey was simply getting started, with me at the helm, navigating the storm. Chapter 11. The Past Returns. Have you ever gotten lost in the darkness, Zuri? Elias leaned against the ship's polished wooden railing, his silhouette sharp against the frosted glass of the observation deck. The Antarctic winds howled outside like a restless spirit, sending gusts of icy air through the narrow gaps. As I watched snowflakes dance outside, I took a moment to consider my next words, unsure if I wanted to be quite that candid. It depends on what you mean by lost, I finally replied, pushing my hair back. My heart raced with images of past mistakes, the jagged edges of memory gnawing at me like the biting cold. Losing your way is easy, but losing who you are, that's the real danger, he replied, leaning in closer. The scent of his cologne, fresh linen accented with a hint of cedar, wrapped around me, igniting something I thought I had long buried. Maybe people only find themselves again after they've been lost, I said, my voice steady but soft. His gaze bore into mine, each moment stretching like the shadows cast from the flickering lanterns scattered around the ship. But before he could respond, the door swung open with a creak, loud enough to drown out the tension between us, and in walked a blast from my past. Did someone say lost? Maya's exuberant voice shattered the stillness like a cracked ice sheet. She looked vibrant, her curly hair framing her face, drawing attention to her fierce brown eyes. I'm the reigning champion of losing my way in the wild, or in love, she quipped, laughing as she threw her arms around me for a hug that pulled years of history along with it. Hey, Maya, I said, pulling back, realizing now that she had followed me to this expedition. What are you doing here? Surprise! I couldn't let you have all the fun freezing your butt off without me, she declared with a wink while shooting a glance at Elias. And who's this strapping gentleman? Elias Carter. Nice to meet you, he said, extending his hand. The way he held himself, composed yet powerful, had taken first-time observers by storm. Maya was no exception. I could see the spark flicker in her eyes, igniting playful curiosity. Pleasure's all mine, she said, shaking his hand with an energy nearly electric. What's your story? You seem a little too enigmatic for this wintry paradise. Elias smirked at her challenge. I save people from getting lost. His eyes darted to me, lingering just for a moment, and that moment was heavy with implications I wasn't ready to unpack in front of Maya. I shot him a warning look, but he only chuckled, the sound warm and teasing. Well, you've chosen the right woman to save, Maya said with exaggerated emotion. Zuri here was just telling me how she's been navigating life like a duck on the frozen waters. Her tone was conspiratorial, as if I were the punchline of an inside joke. I rolled my eyes, but a smile crept onto my lips. Thanks for that, Maya. Thanks a lot. What can I say? I thrive on your chaos, she shot back, her eyes sparkling with mischief. My humor, however, quickly turned on its head. The playful banter was warm, yet that very warmth froze me to my core, as I recalled the unhealed shards of my past. Elias sensed the change in my demeanor. We should probably find somewhere less crowded if we're going to have an honest conversation, he suggested, his voice low and unwavering. Isn't that the mission? To connect? Maya challenged, unrepentant. I raised my hand, cutting through the frosty atmosphere. Maya, can we keep this a little less emotional? Just for tonight? She tilted her head, her gaze sharp. Or do you really want to talk about how Elias is the one you've been dreaming of all these freeze-over months? Dreaming, I said, half laughing, half panicked. Let's not jump the gun here. We've only just met. Not true. He spectated and nurtured your life from the shadows, Maya teased, gesturing dramatically. You were practically blooming under his invisible warmth. I'd call it a transformative glow-up. Elias chuckled, but kept his eyes fixed on mine. You make it sound like I'm some sort of magical gardener. Quite the gardener, Maya replied slyly. And Zuri's the rose in winter. Must be freezing in your idealistic garden, I quipped, unable to stifle my laughter, but aware of the underlying tension. I needed air, clarity. I turned abruptly, heading toward the deck. "Hey, wait!" Elias's voice followed me like a shadow. "Where are you going?" "Outside. I need to breathe." The icy air smacked me in the face like a bracing slap, a contrast to the warmth we had just shared inside. It was refreshing, yet cruel, encasing me in a fog that mirrored my tumultuous feelings. Elias caught up to me, his coat flapping in the wind. "You don't have to escape, we." I spun to face him, the moon's luminous reflection creating shimmering glimmers on the ice around us. "I need to make my own way, Elias. You know that," I said. "You're not my rescue. I appreciate the help, but I'm not some vulnerable damsel." His expression shifted, the warmth in his gaze flickering, as if he was grappling with the complexities my words unleashed. "That's not what I meant. I don't see you that way," he replied, frustration coloring his voice. "I see you because you are standing strong on your own." "Then why do you keep pulling me in?" I spat, the edge of my words sharp as the frigid wind snatched them away. "Because you're magnetic, Zuri," he said, stepping closer, the tension between us thickening. "And I can't help wanting you." "I don't want to be wanted," I countered. "I want to be enough on my own." He sighed heavily, raking his fingers through his hair, a gesture that only intensified the fire crackling between us. "We cannot pretend there's nothing here. When I look at you, I see a woman powerful enough to conquer worlds, and I want to be part of it, not in a way that diminishes you, but in one that elevates us both." Just then, there was a loud laughter from inside. Even amidst the howling winds, I could hear Maya's playful shouts, punctuated by the sound of glasses clinking. "Guess the party's still going strong," I said, aiming for a casual tone, but knowing we were teetering on a precipice, our destinies intertwined. "I don't want to be a part of that," Elias said, his desire radiating with each word, pulling me back into the gravity of his presence. The moment we stepped out here, it was only the two of us. Logic screamed at me to focus, to pull away, yet my heart surged at his declaration. I took a hesitant step closer, the air between us shimmering with the heat of unspoken desires, my breath mingling with the crispness of the night. "Zuri," he murmured. In one sweeping moment, I gave in, surrendering to the electricity sparking between us. I kissed him, and it was as if the sky had cracked open. The kiss was fierce, thawing the ice that had encased our hearts. Our lips danced, mapping the hunger we both held locked inside. "I've wanted this since the moment I laid eyes on you," he whispered against my trembling lips, as we pulled apart just enough to breathe. "Really?" I countered, trying to recapture some composure. "Weren't you busy saving me from myself?" "Two can play at this game of teasing," he said with a challenging smile, and the way his eyes glinted stirred something wild inside of me. "Then how about you stop pretending and let's move forward instead of treading water?" I suggested, gripping the fabric of his jacket as the air between us heated, igniting the tension until it became palpable. "Are you ready for everything that comes with me?" he asked quietly, his voice steady but raw with emotion. "I've been ready, but you have to let me in," I breathed, feeling the invisible thread of connection deepen, wrapping around my heart. "Let's make our mark then," he said, brushing my hair back with his fingers and catching my lips again, this kiss deeper, more fervent. The cold air became a mere backdrop to the inferno we initiated, the ship creaking and shuddering, as if it too were a witness to our reckoning. Our kisses became frantic, heated, chased with laughter that echoed into the night. And yet, lurking somewhere in this frozen haven was the feeling, the shadow, of a betrayal waiting to return. A reminder that while love could melt ice, sometimes it was the chilling memories of the past that broke us most profoundly. "Are you ready for whatever comes next with me?" His voice returned, more insistent now, both a challenge and an invitation, as he pulled me closer. "I suppose we could try to conquer the world together," I whispered, a teasing smile playing on my lips, although uncertainty lingered, threatening to seep into this idyllic moment and dissolve it in an instant. I can't wait to see what exciting chaos we create, he replied, his lips curving into a grin, one that promised adventure. Little did we know, the past was already rising like the tide, ready to resurface in a storm of emotions, jealousy, and the revelation that neither of us quite anticipated. Chapter 12, Finding Trust. The air in the ship's kitchen was rich with the aroma of melting butter and garlic, an inviting warmth that stood in stark contrast to the icy terrain outside. I stirred the risotto with a steady rhythm, savoring the gentle wave of steam enveloping me, cloaking my thoughts in a soft haze. Each stir felt like a small act of defiance against the encroaching chill, both from nature and from the complicated emotions swirling within me. My fingers worked intuitively. The heat from the stove was a welcome distraction. I longed for the familiar simplicity of cooking, where ingredients yielded easily to my will. But the weight of what had happened earlier that day loomed large in my mind, puncturing my resolve. Elias's presence was a warmth I both cherished and feared, like the flames of the stove threatening to scorch the pot if I looked away too long. "Looks amazing, Zuri. Did you finally figure out how to cook something without burning it?" laughed Mariah, my bubbly friend, who bounded into the kitchen with boundless energy that clashed delightfully with the somber atmosphere. Her presence was a much-needed reprieve, a beam of sunlight in the curve of my despair. "Very sunny," I replied, a half-hearted smirk threading through my otherwise weighted expression. "Since when did clumsy hands become a culinary critique?" "You joke, but I was just looking out for those poor, unsuspecting diners. I mean, they actually gave you the kitchen? They're either brave or foolish." Her cheeky grin broke across her face like the dawn, and for a moment I felt lighter. Suddenly the door swung open with a chill that cut like a knife, and there stood Elias, silhouetted against the icy corridor. A thick winter jacket was draped around him, his hands shoved deep into the pockets as if he were trying to anchor himself to the ground. The moment our eyes met, a jolt surged through me, an electric connection that was both exhilarating and terrifying. "Zuri, he started, but his words were abruptly swallowed by a gust of cold air as the door swung shut behind him. The warmth of the kitchen seemed to flicker under the weight of his presence. Mariah looked back and forth between us, then waggled her eyebrows as if she were orchestrating a romance film. "I should leave you two lovebirds. Zuri, do you need anything?" "Not really," I began, but she was already backing out and winking as she feigned closing the door behind her. "Just a minute," I called after her, half exasperated, half amused. Elias was still watching me, the tension coiling silently together. Words hung in the air between us, thick and electric, heavy with everything unspoken. "Zuri," he said again, this time with more urgency, taking a step closer. "We need to talk." "Do we? Because I thought our last conversation was a masterclass in avoiding the truth," I shot back, crossing my arms. I could feel the defensiveness creeping in, the instinct to shield myself from his gaze. "Let me explain." His voice meshed heat with ice, a dangerous combination I didn't quite know how to navigate. "Explain what, Elias?" I took a step back, forcing a barrier of space. "How you acted as my anonymous benefactor, the shadow behind the shiny new life I've built, the same shadow who fills my mind with little else but confusion and longing." "I never wanted to hide from you," he said, his voice low and steady. "What I did was to help you." "I didn't ask for your help." I felt my heart thudding violently, rage twisting in a gut that yearned for clarity. "And now you expect me to just accept this betrayal with a smile?" "It's not a betrayal if it was love," he said, eyes boring into me, a dark storm dancing within the depths. "I just couldn't face you, not after everything." The air seemed to warp around us, thickening with unresolved feelings. I could almost taste the tension, a bittersweet tang that mixed with the savory aroma of the risotto. "Love? This isn't love, Elias. This feels like manipulation. like a puppet show with you pulling the strings. I was afraid you'd reject me. I'm still afraid, he confessed, running a hand through his hair, the movement both wild and desperate. But Zuri, I watched you rebuild something beautiful. You didn't need me then, but I needed to support you. I needed to know you were okay. The admission hung between us, ripe and heavy, but my own fears gripped me tighter. And now, I challenged, swallowing hard, what happens now that I know the truth? You're right. I might not deserve your trust. For the first time, I saw a crack in his facade, but I want to earn it. Let me in, Zuri. Let me show you who I am beneath this mask. Could you even do that? I felt the suffocating ball of uncertainty tightening in my chest, but beneath it lay something new, something wild and intoxicating that ached to be unleashed. Can you really be the man I need, or are you just a fantasy I constructed to avoid facing my reality? Zuri, he stepped closer, intensity radiating off him like the sun breaking through a winter storm. I'd give anything to be that man, but I can't promise you absolution. I can only promise you honesty moving forward. My heart raced, torn between the worlds of the mind and the desire simmering just below the surface. That's not enough, Elias. I need to know you're not just here to play savior. Then tell me, what do you need? His voice dipped low, seductive and rough, like smooth, dark chocolate. I'll do anything to show you I'm worthy of your trust. I bit my lip. My pulse thundered against my veins. How could he make sacrifice sound so enticing? The heat between us was a live wire, sparking patterns over the unsteady ground we walked, filled with betrayal and desire. I need to see the man behind the facade, I replied, barely a whisper. I need you. Then let's not waste time holding back, he said, the tension crackling. He stepped into my space, closing the distance, proximity igniting the air like the first sun dipping below the horizon in a long, glacial night. I met his gaze with a daring challenge of my own, the trust still fragile, but burning with desire. You mean let's have some fun? He laughed softly. It was a light sound in the oppressive weight of our earlier confrontation. Fun, huh? Is that what we should call this? My breath hitched as my heart raced, caught between the heated glances and the incendiary distance narrowing between us. I reached out to curl my fingers around the warmth of his jacket, pulling him closer, heart and body drawn like the tide. Maybe fun is exactly what we need right now. But it's so much more, isn't it? He murmured, searching my eyes, moving dangerously close as I felt his breath tickle my skin. I exhaled softly, the nervous whirl mixing with mead as an intoxicating warmth flooded between us. Let's just see where this moment leads. As his lips captured mine, the kiss swept through me like an avalanche of electricity, sweetly invasive and profoundly cathartic. There was no hesitation, no trepidation, just the collision of our desires unfurling unabashedly, the promise of vulnerability. The tastes of garlic and butter faded into a distant memory against the hunger surging between us. And as our bodies melded in rhythm, I felt the steam swirling around us. It was intoxicating, an antidote to the chaos we danced upon, ravaged and joyous, freed from restraint. Outside, the ice cracked under the weight of the world. Inside, the borders of ourselves melted away. Elias, I whispered against his mouth, breathless and alive, can you love me like this? He pulled back slightly, searching my eyes as if they held secrets yet untold. Oh, Zuri, if you let me, I mean to do so much more. And in that moment, I could almost believe him. This quiet was a luxury I hadn't realized I craved until now. In a way, this solitary space resonated with my inner turmoil, the isolation, the shimmering potential of these stones, waiting for their transformation into something of value. Elias, do you think they miss more than just the warmth? I asked, absently picking up a dark blue sapphire lying among the emeralds. It was set in a mounting of intricate silver filigree. its glimmers flickering like memories of a warmth I didn't know how to hold on to anymore. He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, the very picture of assured confidence. "What, you mean the gems?" His voice carried a playful lilt, coaxing me from my focus. "I'm pretty sure they love being here just as much as the next rock." "You're impossible," I muttered, feeling the corners of my lips tugging upwards. I returned my attention to the gems, but only to hide my growing amusement. The weight of this expedition loomed just beyond the door, with cuts and scratches from the rivalry between the investors still fresh in my mind. Had I been wiser, would I have chosen to separate myself from both the stakes and the people? Am I? Elias stepped further into the room, his presence warming the icy air crackling around us. "Seems to me you're the one who has a penchant for the dramatic." "I had to fight a lot to see beyond what everyone expected of me," I said softly, still playing with the sapphire. "They see the jewelry, but I see the story woven into every stone, the journey that's yet to come." "All this from a mere rock?" His tone softened, betraying a sliver of vulnerability. "Every investor can talk a good game, but it's the ones behind the stones who matter most." I turned to meet his gaze, momentarily caught in that electric moment where everything else faded away. "You wouldn't understand. Try me." The challenge in his eyes ignited an unexpected thrill in my stomach. "Let's just say that I've invested in more broken dreams than I care to admit," I replied, feeling emboldened by both his proximity and the lingering trust we had slowly built through the chaos surrounding us. "Sounds like you're due for evaluation," he remarked, an inviting warmth in his playful smirk piercing through my reserves. "What's your worth now, Zuri?" Suddenly there was too much air between us, and I was desperate to close the distance. "I'd prefer to rediscover my value alongside a formidable partner. That way we can keep each other honest." "Is that an invitation?" He took a step closer, tilting his head just enough to reevaluate the sapphire still in my hand. "No." Perfect timing. Our friend Jake burst into the workshop, unceremoniously interrupting the moment. "What do I smell? Commitment? Potentially emotional investment?" "Shut up, Jake." I threw a cloth-covered gem at him, which he narrowly dodged, his laughter spilling out like an unexpected release of tension. Jake grinned, hands held up in mock surrender. "You know I'm just playing, though I wouldn't mind a bit of commitment if it involves the ship's exceptional rum." Elias leaned back against the countertop and folded his arms, his eyes sparkling with mischievous fire. "Jake, I can guarantee you'll be much better off with gems than with the ship's dubious alcohol choices." "Man, you seriously need to lighten up." Jake grinned, swiping a crystal from my workstation and holding it to the light. "But you, Zuri, you're like a methodical magician. Less illusion, more intent. What's the trick?" "The trick is that you think this is just about jewels." I glanced between Elias and Jake, lowering my voice conspiratorially. "But in reality, these gems are my heart's aspirin." "Wow, fanciful, but it sounds like you need a new heart." Jake raised an eyebrow skeptically. "You've been burying yourself in your work since we arrived at this godforsaken place." "Godforsaken? I'm not hating on Antarctica just yet," Elias cut in, a devious glint in his eyes. "You might find the weather can encourage some pretty fascinating closeness." "Elias," I shot him a warning glance, barely containing my giggle. Jake raised his palms as if I'd just pointed a gun at him. "Okay, I see this could get interesting. Just don't make the rest of us regret booking a ticket." "What's there to regret?" Elias held my gaze, the layered weight of his stare igniting the air between us. "Besides, relationships need exploration and renewal." Before I could respond, our conversation was interrupted again. A loud banging echoed from across the ship. "What was that?" Jake shot a bewildered look at us. "More bad news?" Elias mused, glancing up toward the ceiling, frowning at the urgency of the noise. "It's hard to tell with the faults of this heap," I muttered, folding my arms, tension returning as if it had an assistant to help unpack. Jake's suddenly serious expression danced with concern. "Let's check it out. Another potential avalanche for the record books, shall we?" The The three of us hurried down the narrow corridor, the unyielding chill of the air seeming to gain weight with every step. The low hum of electricity crackled overhead, illuminating the deep, wooden hues of the ship's interior. A stark contrast to the frigid backdrop of the outside world. "What do you think could break in the middle of an iceberg?" Jake asked, adding a certain lightness to the panic that buzzed in my chest. "Probably some of your hopes and dreams," Elias shot back, his smirk a shade too confident. "Right, because clearly my dreams are viable here." Jake rolled his eyes dramatically. "Maybe just borrow some courage from Zuri," Elias quipped as we rounded a corner. "Yeah, sure," I chimed in, "like that'll work out with all your emotional baggage." Jake let out a low chuckle, rounding the corner, but the air shifted once more as we reached the area near the cargo bay where the sounds reverberated. Two crew members were struggling to maneuver crates, and a corner of something large had come loose, revealing contents rapidly spilling out. "What are you doing?" I shouted in panic, rushing up. "Those were supposed to be secured. What about the jewelry we can't afford to lose?" "Just a little hiccup," said one of the crew members, who looked at me with bewilderment in his eyes. "Not so little," Elias stressed, stepping closer, protective energy radiating off him as he quickly took charge, assessing the situation. "Stand back," he directed, and I watched him take control. I felt an inclination toward him that pulsed through my veins. He was brilliant, both commanding and deft in his movements, his mind racing ahead of the chaos around us. A wave of admiration washed over me, intermixed with the heady mix of adrenaline, as I realized I wasn't the only one who could commandeer power. After a brief flurry of movement and clear orders, the crates were reshuffled, and the area cleared just in time, leaving only a few scattered, glittering reminders of what could have gone wrong. There was a moment of tense silence, an unspoken connection threading between us, the buzz from the chaotic situation feeding into something deeper, something barely considered before. "Good save," I murmured, breathless, as we stepped back. Elias turned toward me, the softest flicker of a smile breaking across his lips. "What do you expect? Practice makes perfect." "Seems to me that instead of flinging accusations, some constructive appreciation is needed here," Jake interjected, crossing his arms. Elias shot him a glare, though his inner smile remained. "Trust me, she's only worth appreciating." Whoa, I chuckled. "Elias, getting all mushy, are we?" At that, Jake let out a hearty laugh, and the moment of tension began to thaw. "Focus on the next possible avalanche, Zuri. Who knows when we might make headlines next?" "Is that your strategy?" I challenged him, unable to help the playful lilt in my tone. "Create a disaster anytime you want horror headlines?" "No, but I do hear that surviving an iceberg builds character," Elias returned coolly, his gaze still fixed on me. The banter lightened the air. I stepped forward toward him, letting intent guide me. "Then what do you say to a more intimate adventure after this?" "You mean an explosion of our emotional investment?" he teased, leaning closer, our breaths intermingling in the cold atmosphere. "Yeah, something along those lines," I whispered, suddenly aware of the electrifying tension stretching between our moments of laughter, even in the face of adversity. "Sounds thrilling." "We'll be risking our hearts this way," I said, lifting my chin, daring him to embrace the possibility. "Who said life was boring?" Elias smiled, easing me toward the door. As we dispersed back into the shambles of everyday life within the ship, I couldn't shake the electric tension that still linked us. Through storms and chaos, laughter and secrets, relationships blossomed, not just in moments of intimacy, but across a landscape complicated yet undeniable. I grinned at the journey unfolding, one crafted like a masterpiece. Little did I know, the real adventure was just beginning. Chapter 14. Unwanted Attention. The cold pressed in against the expansive windows of the ship like a stubborn history refusing to be forgotten. Flakes of snow continued their slow descent, creating a delicate haze that blurred the horizon and muted the reflections on the polished steel. Outside, the world might have been a canvas of white, but inside the ship, heat simmered. both from the pulsing engine that kept us afloat in this icy embrace and the gathering tension among us. Just moments ago, laughter filled the lounge, blending with the soft clink of glasses and rustling of fabric, while the icy wind whipped howling outside. But now, as the door swung open, all the warmth evaporated, leaving behind a cold, sharp silence. I stood, rooted to my spot, as she entered. Mara Sinclair, Elias's ex, tall, impossibly elegant, with hair that flowed like liquid obsidian down her back and a smile that could thaw Greenland's glaciers. She had come in, laughter trailing behind her, eyes sparkling like shards of ice, while my heart sank into my stomach, the very air thickening around me. This was not just an unwelcome face, this was a storm on the horizon. I glared sideways at Elias. His expression was a tempest, balancing on the precipice of admiration and annoyance. He wore his usual composed armor, but the slight tension in his jaw belied his unease. My chest tightened, and the identity I wore, the ambitious jeweler, the confident entrepreneur, felt suddenly flimsy against the sleek, polished grandeur of Mara. "Elias, I had no idea you'd be here," she exclaimed, her voice a melodic draft cutting through the room full of chatter. I hated the sweet lilt of it. "Neither did I," he replied, his voice steady, but the space between us felt charged, like a live wire begging for something to spark, something furious and implosive. "If I'd known, I would have brought the vintage champagne from New Year's." She stepped closer, her presence magnetic, effortlessly drawing the attention of those around her. I suppressed a sneer as my stomach churned. This was a game, and she was a masterpiece on the chessboard, one I hadn't signed up to play. Megan, one of my closest friends, nudged me. "Hey, Zuri, she's a blast from the past, huh?" Her tone was light, but the weight of it sat heavily on my shoulders, a rock on a wire. "Just a little too old for my taste," I snapped back, forcing a smile. "Time to break out the party tricks, right?" Elias chuckled, but his eyes never left Mara. "I think I remember that vintage champagne. Didn't it lead to quite a few interesting conversations?" He raised an eyebrow, expertly lacing humor with tension. Her laughter resonated, flaring with familiarity, and I could see her gauging him, inching closer, as if testing the waters of some worn current between them. It stung. "Haven't you heard? Some conversations are best left in the past, don't you think?" I interjected, my voice sharper than intended. "Oh, I don't know, Zuri. Some pasts can be rather fascinating." She smiled, and the weight of her gaze shifted from Elias to me, cold and calculating, as if sizing me up. "Indeed," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. "But then again, I'd rather focus on the present." I gestured to the bustling crowd, hoping to divert the spotlight. Her expression flickered, tracing the contours of anger and amusement. "I suppose the present can be charming in its own way." There was a challenge laced in the air, a crack in the facade of friendly banter. The atmosphere shifted, and my laughter voiced itself less as amusement and more as mockery. "You're good at making memories, Mara. Just like you made a memorable exit from Elias's life." "Touché," she conceded, the spark in her eye never dimming. "But who doesn't enjoy a little nostalgia, right, Elias? Life before Zuri was quite a ride." I felt the ground beneath me tilt. "You two sure have a lot of history. Any chance we can stick to the future instead?" I retorted, feeling embers of jealousy turn into a veritable blaze, each word a stab at the heart of my rising uncertainty. An electric silence enveloped us, the temperature dropping another few degrees as Elias stepped forward. "Maybe you should tone it down, Zuri. There's no reason to instigate." He redirected his focus at me, his tone protective, yet unmistakably authoritative. "Instigate?" I laughed, my voice edged. "I'm just calling out what's clearly at play. Or should we pretend like everything's sunshine and light when there's a snowstorm brewing behind us?" My chest heaved with a mix of indignation and fervor, every ounce of my being alive with challenge. Mara smirked, leaning back casually against the polished bar, arms crossed in silent triumph. "They do say the past has a funny way of creeping back into your life, doesn't it?" She won't stop until she's taken the air out of the room, Elias, I snapped, shooting daggers at Mara without mercy. Can we not discuss how your fleeting relationship was so much more charming than anything I could possibly offer? A flicker of uncertainty crossed Elias's face before being replaced with resolve. Trust me, Zuri. You have nothing to worry about. This is a different time, a different place. Different place, same game, I hissed back. Maybe it's your memory that needs adjusting. The bickering felt like two wild beasts trapped in a cage, my heart racing faster than reason. I longed for clarity, for strength, even as Mara's presence weighed heavy on both Elias and me. Insatiable jealousy erupted like a geyser in my chest, urging me to confront her, concoct a plan, or better yet, storm out in dramatic fashion. I think it's time I find my glass of vintage champagne, unless someone wants to join me, I snapped, brushing past Elias, ignoring the conflict and the chaos brimming behind me. Zuri, wait, Elias called, but the heated look in his eyes, the way he brought his hand up to his mouth to chew at his knuckles, made me linger for just a moment. I think even the ice deserves to crack, don't you, Mara? I tossed over my shoulder, and the silence sat thick in the air as I rushed down the corridor towards the small observation deck, desperate for clarity and a rush of cold air. Outside, the wind whipped my hair into a frenzy, its sharp chill almost invigorating. Below deck, I could hear muffled conversations, laughter, and the gentle hum of the crew's movements. But above, the world felt lonely. It matched the confusion of my heart and the ache of longing. Zuri, his voice broke through the confusion, deeper and more serious than before. He followed me, his footsteps echoing amidst the sound of the storm churning outside. I turned, facing him in the biting air, my breath visible in front of me. You shouldn't have let her in. Why? Because I didn't know she was here? Because I should arrange my life to keep you comfortable all the time instead of dealing with reality? He stepped closer, his presence warm, a stark contrast to the icy elements swirling around us. Reality? I laughed bitterly. Your reality comprises taking a stroll down memory lane with your ex-girlfriend and her not-so-charming antics. Zuri, you have to understand, Understand what? That I'm not enough? That I've been chasing shadows? Before I could brace myself, he stepped forward, trapping me between the cold glass railing and his fierce gaze. You are so much more than enough. You're the centerpiece of my life right now. But you need to face this jealousy. It's consuming you. Jealousy? Oh, please. What I feel is pure survival instinct. The wind howled, and I held my ground. You think she can reel you back in with a few charming smiles and traces of history? It's all skin deep, Zuri. You know that. I'm here for you, not her. Always you. His fingers brushed my face, his warmth radiating against the icy facade I was desperately trying to maintain. You can't let her get to you like this. I trembled under his touch, swayed by how right he was and how wrong my heart felt. The storm surged inside, fueled by passion, by jealousy, by tumultuous uncertainty. You're not seeing the truth. Maybe you like the idea of her. You loved her once, didn't you? I found myself whispering, vulnerable. Loved, past tense. He pulled me in closer, our breaths mingling with the frosty air. I'm not here for nostalgia. I'm here to build something real with you. The storm glared down as I stared up at him, his honesty warming me despite the cold. I wanted to counter, to demonize her presence, but the strength in his gaze grounded me. He hadn't just conquered my heart. He helped me reconstruct my life. Yet with Mara's arrival, all my foundations trembled. Elias leaned forward, and the turbulence ebbed, replaced by potent magnetism. Zuri, I need you to trust me. I wish I could, I whispered, voice raw and trembling. Our lips collided, igniting a firestorm of passion that swallowed all uncertainty. His kiss constricted the storm swirling around us, melting away the frost of jealousy and fear. Every doubt, Every lie evaporated into the mounting desires that had waited too long for this moment. When we broke the kiss, his breath mingled with mine, all-consuming and achingly necessary. "Look at me," he murmured, his eyes fierce with intention. "You are the only one I want. Let's make that indisputable." And with each moment we stood there against the howling storm, my resolve solidified. Maybe the ice outside didn't reflect the warmth of our connection, but it wouldn't stop us from defrosting every shadow it cast between us. "Let's carve our own memories," I whispered back, fully prepared to embrace the heat of the forbidden, a space between desire and release where Mara's presence became irrelevant. With a sudden grin, I added, "But you owe me some vintage champagne for making me face her." "Well then," he chuckled deeply, the storm dimming into a light haze around us, "let's make sure it's a toast worth remembering." Chapter 15. The Call to Action. The thrum of the ship vibrated through my bones, each tremor underscored by the rhythmic clanking of steel against ice. A shudder ran through the corridors, echoing the urgency that saturated the atmosphere. I stood at the large panoramic window of the Arctic lounge, staring out at a landscape forged of bright, white desolation, the view offering no semblance of the chaos edging ever closer to us. Fog licked at the edges of the vessel like phantom fingers, and I could feel a familiar tension knotting in my stomach, deeper than the icy waters below. "Elias," I called, my voice steady, though inside I felt like a coiled spring ready to snap. He emerged from the dim light of the adjoining hallway, his expression a mirror of my own, sharp, concerned, alive. "They're coming," I said, glancing at the sky, where ominous clouds settled like heavy down blankets, foreshadowing an impending storm. "We'll be ready," he replied, assured yet charged. His presence infused me with fire, the way the sun creeps insistently over the horizon. Elias stepped closer, leaning against the wooden railing beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. The warmth emanating from him felt oddly tethering amidst the icy view. I turned to him, something crackling between us that didn't require words. "I've worked too hard to let them ruin this," I said, fists clenching in determination. "My designs, our crew, everything we've created, I need to protect it." Elias's gaze bore into me, something fierce sparking beneath those captivating depths. "And you will." We locked eyes, and in that fluid moment, any distance faded. "But you aren't alone in this fight. I'll stand by you." I took a step back, shaking my head as though I could dispel the intoxicating energy swirling between us. "This is my life, Elias. You don't have to take on my battles." Was I trying to convince myself or him? Every instinct screamed at me to disentangle myself from the allure of his protection, though I ached for his steadfast strength. "I made a promise," he replied, his voice a low murmur laced with intensity. "I don't break promises, Zuri." He looked down, an unexpected flicker of tenderness softening his formidable demeanor, before he added, "And besides, it looks like you've underestimated the size of this battle." Across the way, I caught sight of my motley crew gathering, their expressions ranging from apprehension to outright defiance. Linda, our sharp-eyed graphic designer, flipped through sketches, panic mingling with inspiration, while Wiseman, our burly logistics manager, paced like a lion readying for a hunt. They represented the creativity that spiraled through the veins of my designs, each one a reflection of our collective heartbeat. Vocalizing the tension built inside me, I blurted, "They're not the only ones making a move. I've caught whispers of sabotage, a disruption of our outlet." My mind raced back to late-night conversations with Linda, those hushed tones slipping into the air like a curse. Elias straightened, focus sharpening. "What do we know?" "You mean what can we afford to know?" I quipped, the sarcasm a thin veil over my anxiety. It worked wonders to control fear. As the great frozen world outside threatened to engulf us, something shifted within me. I had drawn a line in the ice, and I would not allow myself to slip. Just then, the radio crackled to life. It was Tarek, our navigation officer. "We've spotted approaching vessels, 3 of them. Their flags aren't familiar. Looks like we're about to host a party we didn't invite." Chit-chat erupted in disbelief, while my heartbeat thrummed in time with the urgency in the air. "Let me take charge," I said, my brain igniting with ideas as I gestured toward my fellow crew members. "We need to be proactive." "No," Elias interjected firmly, raising a hand. "We need a plan. One that prioritizes your safety, Zuri. I won't allow you to put yourself in harm's way." There was a protective fervor in his tone, but it also sliced through the space between us, igniting my inner fire. "Are you always this stubborn?" I shot back. "I won't hide while my designs are threatened." The tension tightened again, a taut line between our desires and responsibilities. A slight smirk creased Elias's lips. "You remind me of that very stubborn ship outside, going nowhere fast against an immovable object." "And yet we still have momentum," I shot back. But I couldn't help the laughter that broke free, a comedic lift in the atmosphere, despite the looming threat beyond our hull. Moments like these melted barriers, letting warmth bubble up against the at-hand peril. His laughter joined mine, a shared acknowledgement amid stress. And there it was, the connection I'd both longed for and warred against. I stepped forward, my tone shifting to something quieter, more intimate. "Elias, you know I trust you, but I need you to trust me too. This vision, the jewelry line, the future, I can't give it up." "Then we'll hold it together," he replied, a rippling seriousness emerging in his gaze. His voice dipped lower. "Let's stand firm against the chaos." I took one more breath before we sprang into action. The crackle of activity filled our sanctuary, voices bouncing off polished wood and sparkling metal as we set our strategy into motion. Everything felt immediate, life or death, a pulse driven deeper than ambition or artistry. As my team split into roles, I commandeered the idea of establishing a safe perimeter. As I relayed instructions, I caught Elias's eye. "You're a part of this too," I insisted, reaching out to him across the chatter, and nonetheless feeling the weight of all he carried. "Your strength, your insights, that's invaluable." He leaned closer, every muscle in his body radiating resolve. "I won't stand in your shadow, Zuri. Together, we rise." With hearts pounding and our unified spirit at work, we separated into tasks, adrenaline coursing through us like the life force of a storm brewing beyond the windows. I grouped with Linda and Wiseman, pouring my thoughts into strokes of action as everyone buzzed beneath the weight of uncertainty. With each passing minute, the approach seemed surer, their shadows gathering beyond the display of glass and ice. "All right, Zuri," Linda said, tapping my arm and drawing me into her dauntless enthusiasm. "What's the plan now? Should we arm ourselves with a wealth of diamonds?" Her smirk broke the tension. "Not quite," I chuckled, though a rush of seriousness overtook me as I noted the worry clouding her eyes. "But it could serve as the most expensive distraction." Subtle laughter punctuated my words as I rallied them back. "If they want a piece of us, let them face the sharpest edges first." Around us, the crew began to enact every conceivable response. While strategy formed from chaos, I found Elias devoting himself to the equipment and the subsystems. Each fervent knuckle stroke, each focused gaze, echoed dedication. As he worked, I felt an undeniable attraction, a pull that drew me closer to him, wanting to minimize the distance between our worlds. "Need a hand?" I leaned in, suddenly emboldened, heart racing with mischief and excitement. "You could always hold this wrench," he replied playfully. But I caught the glimmer in his eyes, as fluid as anything on the brink of eruption. I grinned, hand curling around the tool. "Only if you tell me how it works in the first place." Elias ignited with laughter. "Zuri, you might just be the most dreamlike challenge I've ever faced." "Next you'll say I've bitten off more than I can chew," I quipped, but heat was pooling in the air, electrified and unbreakable. With each exchange, every electric brush of skin and lingering glance, the motivations huddled beneath the surface, transformed into flames, curling through my veins. He was a protector, without a doubt, but he was also the temptation that lurked behind every corner I turned. And as we stood amid the tempest, armaments ready at our sides, I felt that volatility shifting into a dangerous form of intimacy. Reality seemed to melt as I moved closer, brushing against his side until our bodies aligned just enough to let tension govern our closeness. But before vulnerability erupted into action, a terse voice called out over the ship's intercom, "All crew to the deck. Prepare for incoming vessels." The call to action demanded we focus, but the edges of our gazes held the promise of something more, something powerful, awaiting liberation beneath our shelter. "Here we go," Elias murmured, the intensity clear in his eyes as he stepped forward, commanding yet protective. "Together," I declared as we exited into the cold, electricity still lingering on our skin, igniting the union of ambition and unspoken desire. Whatever came next, we would face it together. And at that moment, I surrendered to the exhilarating chaos of an uncertain future, and I finally embraced the heart of my own creation. Chapter 16. In the Line of Fire. I stood beneath the vaulted ceiling of the ship's galley, the dense metallic scent of the ice crunching against the hull, mingling with the rich aroma of brewing coffee. Palms pressed against the cool counter, I focused on the routine of making lattes, the tiny hiss of steam rising to greet me like an old friend. The world outside was an inhospitable white wasteland, but here, amid the clatter of mugs and low laughter, I found a moment's peace. The serenity was a thin veneer over the chaos lurking just beneath the surface. Our remote Antarctic expedition had begun with such promise. Yet day by day, an undercurrent of tension crept in, gnawing at us, like invisible fingers reaching into the corners of our minds. Today felt particularly foreboding, electric with a charged sense of anticipation. Elias strolled into the room, tall and relaxed, like the promise of a summer evening amidst winter's hold. He had that way of monopolizing attention. His presence filled every inch of the galley, even as he leaned casually against the doorway. "Need help?" he asked, amusement dancing in his deep-set eyes. He adjusted the woolen scarf around his neck, the dark fabric framing his complexion like the midnight sky. "Unless you can foam milk with your mind, I think I've got it." I smirked, flicking the steam wand as the milk bubbled, frothed into creamy peaks. "Unless, of course, you want caffeine, or are you secretly a tea drinker?" "Just the coffee for now. I like to keep it simple." He grinned, though there was a flicker of something more serious in his gaze. "I need you sharp. I heard the expedition team is meeting to discuss something critical." A lightness slipped from my smile, hanging in the air between us like a tire swing caught in a gust. In his expression, I saw the suggestion of a storm approaching. "What sort of critical?" Before he could respond, a booming crash resonated through the ship, disrupting the delicate hum of the galley. The sound reverberated like thunder, vibrating through my chest. I glanced at Elias, his posture instantly shifting, body coiling like a spring. "Stay here, Zuri," he commanded, moving toward the door with an electrifying urgency. "Like hell I will," I shot back, grabbing my coat from the rack, my heart hammering against my ribcage. I caught up with him as we raced down the narrow corridor toward the noise, a siren call laced with adrenaline. The boat's corridors were empty, the tension palpable. The distant murmur of voices escalated into shouts, panic slicing through the air like the sharpest knife. Elias's hand brushed against mine, a spark, igniting between us, grounding me amid the chaos. We burst onto the main deck, the bitter wind biting through layers of clothing. The icy expanse of the Antarctic stretched in all directions, a vast white canvas, yet it was the chaos at the ship's edge that drew our attention. A group of marauders stood by the railing, gruff silhouettes against the raging storm. Henchmen, armed and chaotic, their eyes glinting with the promise of destruction. They were a stark contrast to the cultured world we'd wrapped ourselves in aboard this ship. Elias, I whispered, recognizing the danger curling around us. I'll handle this. You, no, not this time. My resolve was fortified by the fierce pounding of my heart. I'd spent so long fighting my own battles, crafting a life from the shards of betrayal. I wouldn't let fear dictate my actions now. As we moved closer, the marauders turned to confront us, their raucous laughter slicing through the whistle of the wind. In that moment, Elias's expression shifted, serious and thoughtful, yet charged with the promise of fire. The kind of fire that fuels rather than consumes. It ignited something primal between us. "What do you want?" Elias's voice boomed, steady and commanding despite the chaos. "Your ship, we're taking it," one of the marauders spat, his voice dripped with ambition veiled in menace. "And maybe the two beautiful souls aboard as well." A snarl erupted in my throat before I could silence it. "Maybe you should rethink that strategy." Elias turned to me, a flash of pride lighting his eyes. Before anyone could react, I grabbed a nearby rope and hurled it toward the men, catching one by surprise. The rope wrapped around his legs, sending him crashing forward, a yelp erupting like the crack of thunder. "That's right," I sneered, adrenaline coursing through my veins. "We're not backing down." Elias moved like a shadow beside me, filling the space with quicksilver precision. He ducked to avoid a blow, then countered with a punch that sent another marauder sprawling. I joined the fray, striking at the nearest attacker with a sharp jab, the satisfaction palpable. Zuri Lawson, woman of action. I was finally becoming who I needed to be. We fought side by side, the dynamic between us sharp and tangible. There was laughter amid the chaos, a wild, dark humor that seeped into the tension, like an unexpected joy bursting through tension. "Who knew the coffee maker could fight?" Elias teased between dodging strikes, momentarily catching my gaze with sparkling mischief amidst the strife. "Just wait until you see me bake," I quipped, throwing another well-aimed kick. "Noted. Next time, I'll take my chances with a scone." Amid the chaos, every light-hearted moment tightened the bond we shared. Elias's strength radiated around me. My confidence grew in thrilling tandem. In failing light of the day, we became more than mere allies. We were a relentless force. As the raucous scuffle progressed, an attacker lunged at Elias, and I had a split second to act. I dove into the melee, tackling the man to the ground, adrenaline firing through my veins. The warmth of Elias's body heated the space around us, even as snow began to swirl like a dancer in the distance. "Did you really just—" he began, but was cut off by the sound of another marauder rushing forward. "I've got cleanup," I grinned breathlessly. Together we secured the remaining thugs, the cacophony of battle fading to an aftershock of silence carried by the wind. The marauders, realizing the depth of their error, scrambled back toward the edge, eager to escape our ferocity. "Let's show them some fire, shall we?" Elias's smile was fierce, igniting something deep within me. "Always," I said, and as I lunged toward the final attacker, a thrill surged through me, fueled by something far more intoxicating than survival. It was the undeniable connection binding us in the moment. Breathless, I turned back to Elias, action fading into anticipation. "Are we done here?" He enclosed me within his warm embrace. "For now, but this isn't over." His lips grazed my ear as he pulled away, leaving a tantalizing trail of heat that set my skin alight. "Right, but—" I hesitated, my heart racing, temptation hanging in the air thicker than the Arctic chill. "You owe me," he smirked, mischief glinting in his eyes, a whirlwind of intensity and electric desire. "Oh, I plan to repay you for that," Elias breathed, glancing around us to ensure the threat had been vanquished. As the crew rallied to secure the scene, I felt the swirling blizzard of emotions tearing within me, fueling my resolve. We had each other's backs, a powerful alliance forged amid chaos, and yet, beyond that chaotic moment, the world outside marched on, white and unyielding, while we stood in the heart of a tempest, and within that wild storm, a deeper understanding ignited between us, a promise of connection far beyond the moment. The warmth of his gaze locked onto mine, pulling me deeper, and the promise of what lay ahead sent shivers down my spine. "Don't let go," I whispered, breathless and filled with urgency. Never, he replied, the conviction threading through every word, igniting a spark that could make even the coldest of winters burn. I could feel it then, like a wildfire, unfurling and gathering strength, not just the heat of the moment we had shared, but the brilling storm of everything yet to come. The thrill of it sent my heart racing, and it was not just fear for the battles we faced outside, but the pulsing desire awakening within me for what we could become. Beyond the marauders, the frozen wilderness whispered of deeper mysteries and trials ahead, and as we faced the tempest, I realized something profound. Sometimes the fiercest fire ignites when you least expect it, burning away everything that once held you captive, setting you free. With a determined glance back toward the chaos we had ensued, I dared to consider the wild, uncharted territory of what our connection might mean, just as the night enveloped us. The point of no return had passed. It would be filled with risks. But perhaps, just perhaps, I was ready to embrace the journey, our intertwining fates illuminated by that shared fire. Chapter 17. Strategic Retreat. The low hum of the ship's engines thrummed beneath my feet, a comforting reminder of life amidst the chaos. I'd convinced myself, standing there in the dimly lit corridor, that if I focused hard enough on that sound, it could drown out the shrill tension rising from the main deck. But the moment I stepped out of the shadows, the chill of the metal walls greeted me like a wayward lover, one that offered no embrace, only reflection. Elias was waiting a few paces ahead, his back to me, broad shoulders squared, as he peered through the narrow window, a jagged sheet of ice framing his silhouette. Light spilled through the glass, illuminating the sharp angles of his face, dancing off the remnants of a frown that made my insides twist. The man was a walking conflict, an avalanche of emotions buried under layers of charm and elusive mystery. "Zuri," he said, and I noticed he hadn't turned around, but every syllable of my name came laden with urgency. "We need to find another route. They're gaining ground." "Who?" I tried to sound nonchalant, but my heart ticked up in tempo. The surrounding air felt thickening with danger, the kind I've only read about in novels. "The crew? The expedition team?" He finally turned, those dark eyes piercing into me. "Not just them. There are others." A pause hung between us, as if his words were a snowflake caught mid-fall, fragile and critical. "We're not safe here." "Then what are we waiting for?" Elias stepped closer. Each footfall echoed in the claustrophobic space as he searched my gaze for something I couldn't quite place. "You trust me?" The question weighed heavier than the ice pressing against the ship's hull. It felt like a slippery slope, and all I wanted was to leap. "That's clear by now," I replied, but the bite of the unspoken lingered in my throat, a silent admission of betrayal's past. Yet I took another step toward him. The scent of cedar and the crisp tang of salt from the Antarctic air swirled between us, igniting the space with a magnetic tension. He hesitated, then leaned in, lowering his voice. "Things are going to get messy. If we're isolated—" "I can handle messy," I interjected, a teasing bite to my words, trying to mask the undercurrent of fear. "That's not what I—" His reply was cut short as a sudden crash resonated from the far end of the corridor, followed by muffled shouts from above. Without hesitation, he took my hand, and we bolted deeper into the ship, laughter bubbling out of me despite every pulse of panic. "We must look like the worst spies in history," I gasped through giggles as we darted through a series of narrow hallways, wind whipping around us like a beast in the dark, determined to push us apart. "Let's just say we're attempting a strategic retreat," he shot back, flicking a glance over his shoulder which sent shivers down my spine. We swung into a storage room crammed with nautical equipment, ropes, gear, and darkness that tasted of brine. He slammed the door shut, our bodies almost magnetized in the shivering air, and for a moment, the world outside faded. Silence filled the space, pressing against us with an electrified intensity. "It's just us now," he murmured, eyes glinting with a fierce competitiveness that stoked the flames inside me. "Us against the world? I asked, breathless. He smiled, but it was more of a smirk, lips parched against the tension that just flickered between us. I like the sound of that. But what began as playful quickly spiraled. The door creaked as if it were valiantly holding back an impending blizzard, and Elias stepped closer still, shielding me with his presence. "Listen, Zuri," he said, his voice gravelly and pregnant with something unyielding. "If it comes to it, I need you to trust that I will keep you safe." "You've kept me safe long before this," I replied softly, and the weight of those words hung heavy, a pool of vulnerability brewing in the pit of my stomach. The emotional chasm between us had never felt so charged. I could see in his eyes that he understood the dangerous edges we danced around. "Isn't that the thing?" he murmured, moving closer. "Safety doesn't mean being untouched. Sometimes it means facing danger head-on." My breath hitched, and abstraction faded against the exquisite reality of him. "Like now?" A flicker of uncertainty momentarily crossed his expression, but it vanished as I brushed my fingers against his jaw. "Like us." The silence thickened until it was almost tangible, everything else slipping away as he leaned down, involuntarily drawing me in, merging that last inch of space between us. Our lips connected in a shattering collision. The kiss ignited a wildfire I had surrendered to fully, fingers trembling as I gripped his collar. The world around us faded into a hollow void as his mouth moved against mine, each caress awakening a latent part of me, a long, dormant craving surfacing with a raw recklessness. I reveled in the softness of his lips, mingling with the undeniable heat. "Is it bad that I want more?" I breathed between kisses, the barely restrained need gnawing at my insides. "No," he answered against my mouth, rich and low, not in the slightest. Suddenly, a loud bang reverberated through the ship, shaking the room as if it were fighting to contain our ardor. "We've got company," I whispered, urgency overtaking us, and Elias backed away just enough to peer out into the corridor once again. A string of voices, loud and commanding, echoed from the main deck. This time, it felt dangerously close. "What on earth? Katie is yelling about sabotage," he muttered. But the intoxicating thrill of the moment lingered, igniting a defiant spark between us. I grabbed his hand and practically dragged him deeper into the storeroom, shifting boxes aside, seeking refuge in an unseen corner. "Here," I instructed, and we huddled behind a mountain of ropes, our bodies brushing against each other while our breaths mingled, each exhale a reminder of the intimacy we'd nearly surrendered to. Elias looked down at me, a stray lock of hair falling into his eyes, which glinted with mischief. "You didn't picture our escape plan including rope tunnels?" "Isn't this how James Bond would do it?" I giggled, startling even myself. We could be fighting for our lives, and here I was flirting with fate. "If we survive, I'm reprogramming your ideas about cinema," he replied, warmth breaking through the tension in his voice. "Let's just survive first." I gazed into those deep pools, a connection unfurling that laced our understanding with a fiery urgency. "If we were any other pair, you'd say this was crazy." "Crazy is my favorite flavor." He leaned closer, teasingly brushing a finger along my ribs. "But a calculated risk is what we need right now, Zuri. Calculated risks lead to wonder and—" His sentence broke off as we heard footsteps approaching, and my pulse quickened. "Don't you dare do anything heroic," I whispered, the laughter twisting itself into something fierce and serious. "Who said anything about heroics?" His voice was low, coaxing. "I'm just here for you." Then, against the odds and the weight of our perilous situation, we shared another kiss, not reserved, but bold with a promise of what could be beyond this confined space. The rush of passion ignited under the direct threat. A primal force awakened and wrapped us in glorious fire. The door shuddered, metal groaning, as someone outside jostled it. "After you, dashingly handsome," I joked, forcing levity into the moment, as Elias slid me back to the wall, ready to tackle whatever emerged. His gaze caught mine, clarity slicing through the chaos. "Get ready for anything." And there, in that moment, I realized that love, raw, ferocious love, was the very danger I craved. It would take more than cold intentions to ice out the fire burning between us. With a nod, I stepped out alongside him, ready to battle through the pandemonium that awaited. The outcome, whatever it may be, would only serve to draw the lines of our paths even deeper. The adventure had just begun. Chapter 18. Hot Pursuit. The ice-crusted expanse outside the observation deck glinted like shattered glass under the pale light of the Arctic dawn. I stood at the large window, a mug of hot chamomile cradled between my hands, its vapors curling in languid wisps. The warmth of the tea contrasted sharply with the chill that seeped into my bones, the unyielding ice seemingly beckoning me into its crystalline grip, just as the man behind me stirred an insatiable energy within. "Elias," I called over my shoulder, the tension in my voice barely masked by the facade of calm. "Can you grab me the extra tablets from the medical kit? I might need something stronger than this cozy comfort." His footsteps echoed in the corridor as he moved closer. When he spoke, his voice was low and dangerously inviting. "Maybe you just need the right kind of distraction." The subtle tension in his words had an electrifying effect that sent a thrill racing along my spine. It was a teasing challenge wrapped in the urgency of the moment. I turned toward him, my eyes narrowing in playful skepticism. "And you think that's you?" "Absolutely." His lips twisted into that infuriating half-smile that both ignited and set ablaze the smoldering uncertainty inside me. The dim light cast shadows along his jawline, making him appear more formidable, yet achingly alluring. I rolled my eyes, though I couldn't hide the smirk igniting my lips. "Elias, as much as this ship is an ice prison currently under siege, I've got a mountain of work to get done. I can't afford distraction right now." "Work can wait, Zuri," he teased, leaning casually against the doorframe, radiating a wild confidence that was both intoxicating and unsettling. "The marauders chasing us won't let you spend all day thinking about fine jewelry." I fell silent, momentarily catching my breath. The encroaching chaos was never far from our minds, marauders lurking in the shadows, ready to tear apart everything I'd built. But the unintended thrill of being trapped in a confined space with Elias electrified me. "And what exactly are you suggesting in lieu of achieving my ambitious goals?" I stepped closer, the heat emanating from him, grounding me even as panic flickered at the edges of my consciousness. His eyes darkened, unwavering and filled with a pulsating energy that hinted at the electric tension between us. "Let's say we take a little detour, right around that corner." He jerked his head toward the corridor leading away from the observation deck. "Are you trying to seduce me while marauders are on our trail?" I questioned, raising an eyebrow. "Shouldn't you be all Mr. Perfectly Protective right now?" Elias chuckled, the sound rich like a melodious echo chasing away the shadows in my mind. "Zuri, letting the world around us dictate our pleasures has never been my style." The air between us had changed, transformed by an unspoken bond woven through moments of shared laughter and a growing understanding that became brittle as ice outside. Stepping closer, I could feel the heat radiating from him, as if defying the very chill that clung to the ship. "Okay, I'll bite," I said, my pulse racing. "What did you have in mind?" "Follow me." His voice wrapped around my heart, and with that, he turned and led me through the narrow hallways, where the darkness seemed to curl in on us, cocooning our chaos in anticipation. We came to a small supply room, a cramped utilitarian space filled with ropes, containment gear, and thankfully, a thick wool blanket that caught my attention. As he shut the door behind us, I couldn't contain the excitement coursing through me, mingling with the tension of our reality. "You're insane," I laughed, glancing around, excitement bubbling up to shift my intense worry. "We're hiding in a storage room. Remind me how this is supposed to keep us safe?" Elias stepped closer, his presence solid and unwavering. "Safe? Who needs that when you could embrace the thrill of life?" He leaned in, the world beyond fading, and whispered, "Sometimes we need to let the world fade away and simply feel." I inhaled sharply, our proximity electrifying. The room was constrained, holding the heat of our rising breaths, and my resolve began to melt like the ice thawing outside the ship.